The Legend of the Ninja from the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, Fierce Fighting Under the Battleship. Lightning Release, Gratitude Wave. In front of another battleship, Deru put his sword behind his back, clapped his hands together, and pressed them on the sea. Suddenly, a high-voltage blue-white electric current flowed out from his arms, aiming directly at the clone standing on the water at this time, and struck at high speed. Would release. Great forest technique. Seeing the lightning attack, the clones of Mingshan jumped into the air with extremely clear thoughts and agilely, forming seals to respond. With a low shout, a row of green trees appeared under the water. TSK, what's wrong with this kid's clone? Deru was very surprised. It was not strange that the clone could perform ninjutsu, but it was incredible that it could be like his clone. It's almost as flexible as the original body. Is it because the wood release clone is special? It shouldn't be. Shaking his head, Deru soon stopped thinking about it. Seeing that the ninjutsu didn't work, he took off the big sword on his back and swish. He exerted his strength instantly and rushed towards the clones. Whoosh! A fierce and violent blade wind quickly approached the clones that did not react in time. Clang! It only took half a round to easily behead them all. Deru watched these wooden clones gradually fade into the sea, thinking, if I'm not mistaken, these are just feints, and their ultimate goal is skill. He glanced at the battleship, where Shikaku was imprisoned far behind him. Forget it, it has nothing to do with me. After thinking about it, he mustered up the energy to fight the clones seriously, but he did not look at the battleship again, nor did he move to inform Kimimaro and the others. Boom. After the last round of bombardment in the distance, the battleship stopped using cannons, because at this time, most of the enemies had already approached the sides of the ship, and long-range attacks were meaningless, so they had to use machine guns to block the enemy. Fuck. Mingshan was mixed in the group of clones. Seeing the series of fire snakes, he cursed and complained about the battleship. You scared me. I thought you would bring out an ammo Gatling Bodhisattva. He secretly thanked his luck. If there was such a thing in the battleship, he would definitely be saved. All the wooden clones that were shot by the machine guns of the ships were directly beaten into sawdust and residue, without any room for resistance. Mingshan roughly estimated it, and thought to himself, this time, their fleet has only 5 battleships and 3 destroyers. It seems that after the last war, they did not recover their original combat power very quickly in a short time. He thought about it at the moment. Although it was much easier to fight now than before, he was still a little depressed and worried. This time, without the help of the chakra armor and the shark head, it will be more troublesome. Just as he was thinking hard about countermeasures, whoosh! A strong wind suddenly blew from his right side. Mingshan's heart was pounding. Puff! He thrust it in an instant, barely dodging the fatal knife attack. What? Go into the sea. Deru appeared and was stunned, just about to retract his knife. His eyes suddenly became cold, and he quickly rolled and jumped into the air. Wow. 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 3 clones flashed out from where he was standing, thrusting with swords, but missed. TSK, go to help Choji. Mingshan, who came out of the water wet, shook his head and pointed to other places to order the clones. Understood. The 3 nodded, put away their swords, and ran to support other places. Why don't you use the clones to attack me together? Deru swung his big knife and asked him. I can't help, it's enough for me to stay here. Mingshan wiped the watermarks on the sword with his arm sleeve. Hey. Hearing this, Deru looked around. Whether on the deck or on the sea, this kid's clones were fighting desperately with armored soldiers and cloud ninjas everywhere. To be honest, I admire you. Admire me. Why do you dare to come to the sea alone to save people? Deru asked him. Hey, do you need a reason to save people? Mingshan asked him in confusion. No. Deru shook his head, and then, but you risked coming here alone, so you need one. Hey, when did I say that I came here alone? Mingshan looked at him with a strange and teasing expression. Really? Deru suddenly realized that's what I took for granted. My companions, now they should be searching for people with their clones in every ship. Mingshan clenched the Kusanagi sword in his hand and approached him while speaking. Are you going to save that Konoha ninja? Deru looked at him in surprise, asking casually like that. That's right. Mingshan nodded. Although he didn't understand why he asked this, it didn't stop him from preparing for the attack seriously. Just as Mingshan was about to open his mouth and shout to attack, he only heard Deru. That uncle is on that battleship. Go and inform your companions not to look for him one by one. He pointed to the battleship in the southeast. Huh. Mingshan was very surprised and looked at him speechlessly. Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Deru was a little confused by his look. Why did you tell me this? Mingshan asked him. I don't know. I was just in a spur of the moment and got confused. Deru twisted his neck left and right, making a creaking sound. It's just that part of the reason is that I've been really annoyed with those psychos for a long time. Psycho? Mingshan didn't react at first. Who was he talking about? After a while, he came to his senses and pointed at the warship and said, could it be her? This is a personal grudge. Deru shook his head. Let's put things in order. Come on, let me see whether your sword is more powerful or my sword is more powerful. He glanced down and stood there in a daze while thinking. There's a flaw. Suddenly, ding. Mingshan was almost cut in half by a sword before he could figure out what was going on. He narrowly blocked it with his Kusanagi sword. Bang. After avoiding it by half an inch, he was still kicked out of the water by Deru. After taking a breath, Mingshan looked at the other person with surprise, which was rare. Hey, didn't this cut him at all? Deru took advantage of Mingshan's daze and thought, and secretly used Thunder Escape to release slight electric currents in his body to increase the conduction speed of his nerves, constantly stimulating and strengthening the functions of his body. However, this sneak attack still failed. You are so insidious. I didn't ask you to fight Guangming Zengda. Mingshan was speechless after hearing his words, so he was too lazy to say anything. He accelerated instantly, swung his sword and attacked, facing Deru directly. The battle between the two became increasingly fierce. Dap dap dap. Chapter 252, Submission. Ino, who was sneaking in with her clone at the other end, saw the enemy's fierce firepower and the brutal sweeping of the surroundings. She regretted it in her heart. I'm so stupid. I should have rescued Uncle Shikaku and brought him back to the village tomorrow and then asked him for Sasuke's photo album. Wouldn't it be better? She was annoyed. I can't run away now. I'm really. Hey, Ino. Suddenly, a very urgent voice sounded in her ear, interrupting her thoughts. Ino was about to turn around and scold, but she only heard the clone shouting, "Get behind me quickly, we are going to start the technique together." After hearing this, she nodded subconsciously and cooperated with them immediately. Would release, silent killing binding technique. Swish, swish, swish. From the rippling sea surface, rows of jade leaf branches with new buds were instantly excited and entangled quickly towards the location of the machine gun. The armored soldier standing next to the output point saw that the operation of his weapon was hindered and was about to use his axe to split the tree branches. Whoosh, whoosh. 3 or 5 clones jumped onto the battleship and attacked them directly. Clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing continued. The armored soldier was entangled by these clones and could not maintain the normal operation of the machine gun, resulting in more and more enemies boarding the battleship. Ino, take advantage of this moment. A clone pulled her over and brought her to the bottom of the ship. He half knelt on the ground and raised his hands, signaling for help to jump up. Ino understood and took a few steps to run up, stepped up, and jumped to the edge of the ship's side window, with his hands clasped there. Dang, dang. Almost at the same time, she and the other 2 wall-walking clones joined in step, and they used wood escape to shatter the glass and break the window. After everyone entered the cabin one after another, Ino came in last. Ino, I know. Without waiting for the clone to remind her, she took out the shuriken from her waist bag and stood on guard. Let's go. Hurry up and find Uncle Shikaku. Okay. The group had just taken a few steps when they heard the radio at Ino's neck. Mingshan's urgent shout, "Ino, come here with your clone." In a remote place on the battlefield, Choji was also performing a life and death tug-of-war with his 2 clones. No, I won't go in, even if I kill you. Hey, hurry up and go in, I'll protect you. What are you afraid of? The 3 clones pulled their lips, their veins bulged, but they tried hard to urge this guy, trying to drag Choji, who was squatting on the bottom of the boat in fear of death, to the side window of the hull. Fuck, how heavy are you, Choji? Sweat kept dripping down his forehead, causing his clone to complain about him subconsciously. I can't even pull you. If you want to go in by yourself. I won't go in, even if I kill you. It's too dangerous. Choji howled. After seeing the power of the machine gun, he ignored the complaints of tomorrow and refused to stand up. He just stood there with his clone. Just when all the clones were thinking about getting mad and forcing the fat guy up to find someone. Hey, Choji, can you hear me? Huh. The radio device on his neck, however, made a sound at this time. The clone heard the voice of the original body and stopped playing. What for? Choji answered him unhappily through the radio device. You and my clones, come here quickly. Uncle Shikaku has been found. He urged him urgently on the radio. Really? Hearing this, Choji was overjoyed. He stopped howling, and his legs were more flexible. He got up and rushed to the designated location formation through the wireless communication. Behind him, watching Choji's smooth performance, several clones looked at each other in bewilderment. They shook their heads and sighed in unison. It's really a rotten wood that can't be carved. TSK, it's not here either. Ding. Shikamaru coordinated with his clones to block and deal with the armored soldiers coming down from the upper deck, while trying his best to investigate carefully, but he still found nothing. Could it be that Uncle Shikaku is not on this ship? Mingshin beside him blurted out doubtfully. It's possible. Shikamaru nodded, agreeing with his opinion. If it's not on this battleship, then it must be. Just as he was about to infer and analyze other places of imprisonment, a strong wind suddenly blew behind Shikamaru. Be careful. Ding. Another clone pushed Shikamaru away in time and blocked the fierce sword attack with his sword. That was a close call. Shikamaru turned around and looked at the scene in surprise. I didn't expect to meet Cloud Ninja here again. Shikamaru took a step back to distance himself from the 2 Cloud Ninjas. After seeing that the 2 Cloud Ninjas were attacking him, he was about to ask, the one you detained. Shikamaru, can you hear me? Mingshin's voice suddenly came from the radio. What's wrong, Mingshin? He responded by pressing the device and throwing a kunai to delay the enemy. Ding, ding. Uncle Shikaku has been found. Come over here and join me. Mingshin briefly reported the situation to Shikamaru. Understood. Shikamaru responded, and before the Cloud Ninjas got close to him, he quickly reached out and took out a smoke bomb from his waist bag. Bang! He hit the ground hard, and suddenly a thick fog blocked the enemy's sight. Damn it, they actually threw a smoke bomb. When the Cloud Ninjas on the opposite side dispersed the smoke, Shikamaru and his clones had already disappeared. Kare, what should we do now? One of the Cloud Ninjas asked him hurriedly when he saw the enemy running away. TSK, we can't chase them now. Kare gave up the pursuit reluctantly. There were too many enemies on the ship now. Although they were all clones, they were no less disgusting than the regular ninja troops' harassment, just because there were too many of them. Go and gather our companions. Just as Z informed us before, we don't have to risk our lives to fight these psychos anymore. Be ready to evacuate at any time. Do we really want to do this? The companion hesitated a little, looking at the crowd of people fighting on the sea outside. There were clones, armored soldiers, and machine guns firing continuously. Although they, the Cloud Ninjas, were assigned by the order of Lord Drakeage this time, and sent several teams to assist, he knew very well that everyone was very reluctant to continue working with these guys after having contact with them for a period of time. But we collected 3 times as much as they did. Forget it. Kare waved his hand to interrupt what he was about to say and pointed out, for the sake of that damn ideal country, these guys don't take other people seriously at all. Just do as you are told. If Raikage-sama holds us accountable in the future, Daru, Z and I will bear all the punishments and will not implicate you. Kare explained to him. That's not what I meant. His companion was speechless, and with a wry smile, Can't I just go and pass on the message now? Chapter 253 Outside the Wind. Swish. After his companions left the room, Carrie looked at the two warring parties outside and listened carefully to the occasional trampling and chopping sounds coming from the upper deck. He frowned and thought deeply. It seems that it is necessary to investigate carefully in the future. This clone's original body. Boom. Outside the side of the battleship that Deru had designated before, a large hole was blown out of a part of the hull, and smoke was coming out. Did it succeed? Ino, who was standing next to the hole in the wall of the ship, asked Mingshan in front with a mixture of surprise and joy. It should be successful. Mingshan half crouched near the hole, where the thick smoke had not yet dissipated, observing, and said uncertainly with his back to Ino. After a while, when the smoke had all dispersed, he took a few quick steps and approached to check, and found that the place where the ship was bombed was actually an empty room. Not here? Ino also looked after him and was very stunned to see that there was no one inside. 80% of them are imprisoned in a room further inside the ship. Mingshan analyzed and judged, and he turned to explain to Ino, "You first." Two sharp steel axes fell from the sky and chopped down directly on their heads. Clang, clang. Mingshan reacted very quickly, and with a fierce and casual swing of the sword, he blocked the axe from Ino and his own head. Hiss. Ino took a breath of cold air. This was the first time in her life that she felt so close to death. If Mingshan hadn't helped just now, the axe would have gone straight to. These two bastards are quite good at hiding. The voice came from the far end where the two were. Mingshan looked over and saw a woman with fair skin and long chestnut hair parted in the middle. At this moment, she was looking down at them with her red eyes wide open. "Who are you, bitch?" Mingshan couldn't stand the other party's arrogance and retorted unhappily. "TSK, what did you just say?" Feng Wei heard what he said and immediately became furious. "Bastard, I'm going to torture you to death later." He raised his hands wearing black gloves and stretched them out. Woohoo. It let out a wolf howl that was not human, and its cloak fluttered. TSK. Hearing the wolf howl, Ino couldn't stand it and covered her ears. When she glanced at Feng Wei unconsciously, she was surprised and said, What is that?" She saw that the woman had transformed into a wolf beast in an instant. Although her clothes were the same as when she was in human form, her skin was dark blue, her hair was completely white, and the outer part of her eyeballs turned completely red. TSK, sonic attack. Although Mingshan covered his ears tightly to block out the noise at the first time, he couldn't stand the wolf howl, and even the clones did the same. Ta. Just when Ino and Mingshan had to grit their teeth to endure the sound wave invasion of Feng Wei, a team of armored soldiers who ignored the noise walked straight down from the deck and ran towards them. Feng Wei sneered at the two little ghosts and just stopped howling and was about to speak. Bang, bang. Then I saw that the steel armor of the ship under the feet of the armored soldiers was pierced by the dark green long thorns that suddenly appeared, and it grew wildly in an instant and pierced through the vital parts of the whole body. Swish, swish. Two clones broke through the hull and drilled out, standing behind Mingshan and Ino. Damn it. Feng Wei was angry and shut up, staring at Mingshan through his ferocious wolf eyes. Bloodshot, you did it on purpose, bastard. Hey, can you have some manners? Mingshan couldn't stand the insults and was very disgusted with her. Are you born with a father, but not taught by a mother? You are a bastard, no matter how you open your mouth or close your mouth. What are you talking about, little bastard? Hey, who are you talking about, little bastard? Little bastard, I'm talking about you. Puff, snort. Hearing the two people scolding and answering each other, Ino, who was watching the show on the side, couldn't help but covered her mouth and laughed secretly. Asshole, you dare to scold me in a roundabout way. Feng Wei saw her laughing and then realized that he had been dumped by him. He was so angry that he said, don't let me catch you, otherwise. Bullshit, can't you change your words to something new? Mingshan interrupted her with a spit, full of disdain. Besides, you are worthy of being ruthless to me. Whoosh. He exerted force on his feet, stepped back a little, and instantly accelerated and rushed towards Feng Wei with a sword. Ino, take advantage of this opportunity and go to the cabin with my clone to find someone. When he passed by Ino in a moment, he turned his back and said, I will take care of her. Okay, Mingshan, be careful. Ino nodded and cooperated. Accompanied by other clones, they entered the ship together and carefully searched for people. Swish. After Mingshan and Ino finished talking, they disappeared. When they appeared again, they flashed to the right of Feng Wei. Whoosh, whoosh. The sword swept through the air with the force of thunder. He was quite surprised at the other party's quick body movement and basic reflexes. She dodged before he even got close. TSK, kid, you want to hurt me with just this mediocre swordsmanship? Feng Wei grinned with fangs and mocked from a distance. Haha, go back and practice for a few more years. Mingshan was too lazy to talk. He didn't give up after his slash missed and continued to chase and attack with his sword. Feng Wei mocked him, but he didn't intend to fight him head on. He just teased Mingshan, distanced himself from him, and provoked and lured him. TSK, this damn idiot. Mingshan didn't expect that. Although she turned into a werewolf, her brain had not completely degenerated. She thought to herself, my swordsmanship has always been used to fight against people. Ding. Feng Wei easily swept away the Kusanagi sword with his claws and continued to jump. Swish. Looking at Feng Wei, he was defending and attacking the opponent with his sword while thinking and judging calmly. TSK, it seems that to deal with her full-legged werewolf fighting mode, I must change my strategy, otherwise, I will be eaten alive by this guy. Although Feng Wei strengthened himself with the help of transformation, his strength was not much different from his, but this incompatible fighting method also reminded Mingshan that he should think carefully about his swordsmanship in the future and how to effectively restrain and defeat other non-human creatures when fighting against them. Why, is this all you can do? Before Mingshan could come up with a countermeasure, Feng Wei continued to mock and provoke him. Didn't you curse me fiercely just now? TSK. Mingshan, who didn't want to pay attention to her, was about to glance at the side and swing his arm and sword when he suddenly stared at a vacant space on the ground not far from Feng Wei and sighed softly, as if thinking about something. What is this kid looking at? Although Feng Wei also noticed his eyes glancing at a certain place on her side, she did not pay much attention to it because at this moment, swish, swish, Mingshan. Shikamaru just ran over to find him when the two were confronting each other. You're here, Shikamaru. Mingshan just glanced at him and greeted him briefly. Well, Shikamaru asked him. She has entered the cabin with her clone to look for Uncle Shikaku. Mingshan said quickly, while Feng Wei was not about to run over. Shikamaru, it's just right. I need. Chapter 254. The villain dies because of his talkativeness. TSK, what are you guys talking about? Feng Wei didn't know what Mingshan was going to do, but her intuition told her that if she let them continue to whisper and negotiate, it would definitely be very disadvantageous to her. She immediately set off and used all her limbs to run towards them. Swish, swish. She's coming. Mingshan looked up and saw Feng Wei rushing towards him at high speed. She elbowed Shikamaru to remind him to be on guard. Yeah, I understand. Shikamaru nodded in response and pretended to grab two shurikens from his waist bag, holding them between his fingers, looking at the other party, ready to move. Whoosh, whoosh. A strong wind swept by, and Feng Wei increased her speed to the extreme. When she was about to get close to the two of them, she suddenly stretched out her claws and slapped them on the head. Mingshan and Shikamaru did not have any verbal conversation. They quickly dodged in different directions to avoid Feng Wei's fierce attack. Whoosh. With one claw hitting the air, Feng Wei locked onto a new target in the blink of an eye. She stretched out her long tongue covered with saliva to lick her lips, and her eyes wandered to the Konoha ninja who had just come to the battleship. I can't do anything to that piece of wood, but I can deal with you. While thinking, she chuckled twice and changed her target to Shikamaru. Abu. With a wolf howl, she ran straight towards Shikamaru. Hey, you're not. Ding, ding. Shikamaru saw that she was staring at him, and he swung his arms violently and threw the shuriken to attack the opponent, but it was easily blocked by her. This is so troublesome. Shikamaru glanced behind him depressedly. Sure enough, just as Mingshan predicted, the werewolf changed his hunting target to him. Forget it, let me see. Shikamaru ran sideways and tried to dodge Feng Wei's attack while carefully looking for the point that Mingshan told him. Whoosh. Feng Wei grinned and accelerated, and instantly came to Shikamaru's side, raising his hand to grab and chop him. Ding. Mingshan, who also sped up and rushed over, blocked the attack with a sword, entangled Feng Wei, and let Shikamaru escape from her pursuit. HMM. After a little distance from Mingshan, who was fighting, Shikamaru looked around the scene several times, and finally found the point he said, thinking, found it. Then, next, Shikamaru's eyes moved to Feng Wei, and shouted to Mingshan, hey, I found it, do you want to start? Start? Feng Wei didn't understand what the boy meant by this. Okay. Mingshan heard the words and responded loudly, first nodded, and then the swordsmanship moves became more and more fierce. Bang. Ding. TSK. Although Feng Wei didn't know what the two were going to do, she was not afraid of being targeted. I don't believe that I can't kill you today. Secretly ruthless, she suddenly distanced herself from Mingshan, and she used all her strength to drive the greystone hidden in her chest inside the armor, and poured the energy into her whole body to increase its strength. Roar. Feng Wei growled, and the energy expanded and gathered in her throat. Whoosh. Aiming at Mingshan who was standing there, Feng Wei concentrated all the high quality sound waves in her mouth and accumulated them, and then released them in an instant. Hiss. Seeing the sound wave cannon attacking him, Mingshan quickly jumped to the back to avoid it, and inadvertently widened the distance between him and Shikamaru. Feng Wei did not miss this opportunity, and immediately set off, rushing towards Shikamaru on the other side as fast as a shadow. Whoosh. When she appeared again the next second, Feng Wei was already in front of Shikamaru. She slapped down with her claws, and just when she was about to be proud, bang, Shikamaru was stunned, and then turned into a puff of white smoke and dissipated. It was actually his clone. What? Feng Wei saw this, and knew that he was tricked by the two of them. He immediately wanted to jump away, but, suddenly, what's going on? Feng Wei found that she couldn't move at all at this moment. She raised her head in shock and anger, howling and questioning the two. What did you do to me? Nothing. Mingshan held a sword with a malicious look on his face, and ran towards Feng Wei. Shadow imitation technique. Success. Shikamaru appeared strangely from the side of a broken hull gap, yawning and scratching his head. Feng Wei, who was controlled by the overlapping shadows, also raised her hand, and followed him stiffly to make synchronous movements. In fact, Mingshan originally planned to find an opportunity to use his clone to confuse Feng Wei's attention, and then use the wood escape vine to grow and spread from the gap he aimed at, and tie her up when he saw the gap. And Shikamaru happened to rush to meet outside the ship, so he saved a lot of trouble. Little bastard, let me go. Feng Wei's forehead was bulging with blue veins, and he let out intermittent ghost howls that were not like humans, and roared at the two of them. It's so noisy. Because he used the shadow to control her, Shikamaru couldn't jump too far to avoid the noise. He shouted to Mingshan who was running towards Feng Wei. What should we do now, Mingshan? What should we do? Mingshan heard this, and swung the Kusanagi sword teasingly, grinning. It's very simple, Shikamaru. After that, his eyes suddenly became sharp. He quickly put the sword back into the sheath, clapped his hands, and formed a seal to cast a spell. He pulled out several thick vines from his arms, and rushed straight to Feng Wei, wrapping her tightly. Shikamaru, you can remove the shadow now. Mingshan shouted at him, staring at Feng Wei with extremely cold eyes, and casually drew out the Kusanagi sword again. Oh, okay. Although Shikamaru didn't know what Mingshan was going to do, he still did it, and removed the shadow. In fact, even if he kept the ninjutsu running, he couldn't continue to fix Feng Wei for too long, because the shadow imitation technique had a time limit. Little bastard, what on earth do you want to do? The moment Feng Wei was freed from the shadow's restraints, he wanted to strongly drive the grayer energy, to try to break free from the layers of vines. Humph, what am I going to do? Mingshan waved the Kusanagi sword casually and sneered. Don't you know there is a saying that villains die because of their talkativeness? What did you say? At the same time, in the Hokage's office building, Menyan and Zayamachan were in the reception room, looking at Danzo in disbelief. Ito Mingshan, Yamana Kurino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Choji, the four of them blatantly left the village overnight without asking the mission commission office and their own senior ninjas for permission, and went to the northeastern sea alone. That's right. Danzo nodded indifferently. They seem to think that they can solve the matter of Shikaku alone, and they don't need to wait for the senior ninjas to arrange and deal with it. Pa. A palm slapped on the table. HMPH. Menyan frowned when he heard that. He looked at Danzo through his old glasses with an extremely cold look and asked, "Is this true? You can just do a little investigation and you will know." "No need." Menyan didn't want to do such a boring thing. He turned to Xiao-chan and said coldly, "It seems that some people really need to be taught a lesson. They don't even take the rules of the village seriously." Chapter 255 Feeding the Fish. Indeed. Xiao-chan nodded in agreement with a serious face, agreeing with what Menyan said. Asuma is on a mission, and not in the village, and Hayate is dead, so we should discipline our subordinates for them. When Danzo heard the two advisors say this, the corners of his mouth rose very subtly. "I can do this for you." Whoosh, whoosh. In the air above the battleship, Camilla waved her green bat wings, circling and playing around the battlefield on the sea. I wonder what's going on over there? Just as she was about to fly through another destroyer easily, she accidentally heard a familiar wolf howl. Camilla listened carefully. Is this Feng Wei's voice? She turned her sight to the battleship and found a fat man running along the hull, panting, all the way to hiss. When she looked up and saw Feng Wei tied up tightly with wood, she couldn't help but take a breath and shouted subconsciously, "Feng Wei." At this time, her head and body had been separated, and blood kept gushing out along the gap, and it took a long time before it turned into a trickle. Bang! As the vines of tomorrow were removed, Feng Wei's body, like the head before, fell into the water with a bang. Because they were fighting on the side armor of the ship, once they were killed, no matter who it was, if their feet were not attached to the steel plate, they would fall directly into the sea and become fish food. Damn it. Camilla saw her companions being brutally killed, and she couldn't help but be furious. She roared and flew straight over Camilla. Just when Camilla was about to fly over to the battleship to settle accounts with those little devils, Hyde's majestic voice came from the radio device on his neck. "Lord Hyde, fly back to the flagship quickly. We are going to evacuate from this sea area." "What?" Camilla shouted out in surprise. "Why, do you have any objections?" Hyde seemed unwilling to obey her orders after hearing her implication. "No, you misunderstood." Camilla hurriedly shook her head to explain. "I just saw Feng Wei being killed by those little devils, so I was a little. Feng Wei is dead, so she is dead." Hyde's impatient voice came from the radio. "The most important thing now is to evacuate this sea area with the flagship, otherwise, we will be wiped out by these damn wood flies." "Hey, where are those idiot ninjas?" Camilla was very surprised to hear him say this. "HMPH, that group of people has disappeared. You hurry back now." "Understood, Lord Hyde." Camilla realized how serious what Hyde said was. After looking at the little ghosts on the battleship with hatred, she immediately waved her wings and returned to the flagship. Boom. The machine gun on a destroyer was blown up by the clone, attracting many armored soldiers on the deck to attack it. Bang, bang. Although the clone barely blocked the Axe's fierce attack from top to bottom, it was also hit directly by the hammer beside it, and suddenly faded into a wooden state. This kind of battle scene can be seen everywhere on the sea nowadays. This Ming-shan could hear the fat man's panicked shouting from a distance. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he complained helplessly in his heart, "It's just a corpse. Why are you so just now?" When Dingxi didn't raise his eyes and walked on the steel plate of the ship with his head down, he brushed past an object that was falling straight and fast for no apparent reason. Something directly smeared water on his face. He subconsciously reached out his hand to wipe it, and then he found out that it was blood. "What's going on, Shikamaru?" Dingxi shouted to Shikamaru, who was walking slowly in the distance in doubt. "Well, it's hard to explain." Shikamaru scratched his ears a few times, sighed and said to Choji, "To put it simply, the blood on your face was accidentally splashed on you by a werewolf corpse when it fell into the sea." "Wolf, werewolf." Choji opened his mouth wide, and then he lowered his head and noticed the bloodstains on the steel plate. He asked in a terrified manner, "Yes, who killed him?" "Ming-shan killed him." Shikamaru said this and looked at him with complicated eyes. Hiss. Choji was obviously frightened when he heard him say this. Mingshin killed him? What's wrong, Shikamaru? Mingshin felt someone looking at him, so he looked up and found that the person was Shikamaru. Actually, Mingshin, you didn't have to kill Feng Wei so cruelly, big. Shikamaru tried to persuade him tactfully not to have such a strong murderous intention. Shikamaru, she is our enemy. Mingshin sheathed his sword without listening to him finish. Perhaps what I did was a bit excessive, even against the harmony of nature, but if we were captured by her, how do you think she would deal with it? Shikamaru was silent after hearing this. He had to admit in his heart that Mingshin's words were very realistic. Looking around, the sea and the warships were now full of battles. Whether it was the huge number of clones or the well-equipped armored soldiers, they all seemed to be in a trance and fought red-eyed. Let's not talk about this. Mingshin took out a Binglian pill from his arms, poured out a pill and swallowed it. Choji, Shikamaru, you also go into the cabin to look for Uncle Shikaku. After saying that, he also made a seal to split a row of wooden clones, intending to let them follow the action. Well, okay. Shikamaru nodded. Choji spoke weakly to Mingshin and Shikamaru. Can I? No. Hey, can't you just listen to what I have to say? Upon hearing this, Mingshin walked towards Choji with annoyance and amusement and said, we ventured here just to rescue Uncle Shikaku. Okay, Choji. Hey, but in this battle, it will be the same with or without me, right? Choji tried to argue. It's different, okay? Mingshin smiled and put one hand on Choji's shoulder. If it weren't for the green spinach ball you lent me before. He sighed and looked around at the fierce battle. How could we get so close to the battleship fleet to find someone so easily? Is that so? Of course. Do you think I'm really a Superman and can use chakra infinitely? Hey, what is a Superman? Well, that's not important, as long as you understand my general meaning. Oh. When Mingshin and Choji were chatting, Shikamaru couldn't help but interrupt curiously because he had something on his mind. Mingshin. Mingshin stopped talking after hearing this and turned to look at him. What's wrong? I've been wanting to ask you since just now. Shikamaru paused and said, how did you know that my father was imprisoned in this battleship? Yes. Choji nodded in agreement and looked over. This news was told to me by a cloud ninja who had fought with me before. Mingshin answered Shikamaru's question honestly. Chapter 256 Who is so black-hearted? What? Shikamaru and Choji were both surprised when they heard this. Mingshin patiently told Shikamaru and the others about the fight with Deru. It took him a long time to finish. Why did he tell you where Uncle Shikaku was imprisoned? Choji didn't understand the Kumo ninja's behavior. I don't understand. Mingshin shook his head. To be honest, I don't know why he did this. Well, let's just assume that he has other intentions. Shikamaru scratched his head and interrupted. Mingshin, Choji, now we should. Just as he was about to ask Mingshin and Choji whether they should go into the ship to look for someone. All three of them heard a loud and shrill scream coming from the cabin. That's Sino's voice. No, something must have happened to her. Mingshin predicted this in his heart and said to Shikamaru and Choji, what? Then let's go into the cabin and save her and Uncle Shikaku. Choji didn't continue to be timid like he did when he first came and urged the two. Well, let's go. Shikamaru looked solemn, nodded and entered the cabin first, followed by Choji and Mingshin. They ran through the corridor in pursuit of the sound and soon came to the end, surrounded by a number of clones that had faded into wood and the bodies of armored soldiers scattered on the ground. After the three approached, they saw speechlessly that there were 3 or 2 rats circling around Ino's feet. It turned out that this was because, hey, it's just a rat. Why are you screaming like that? The 3 of them complained in their hearts. Help, anyone can help me drive away the rat. Cough. Mingshin coughed awkwardly, took a few steps forward, swung his sword to drive away the rat, and then reached out his hand to pull Ino. Hey, the rat has been. He just put his hand on her shoulder. Snap. Shikamaru and Choji watched in amazement as Mingshan was slapped hard on the face by Ino with his eyes closed, knocking him unconscious and spinning in circles. Mingshan just stopped spinning, holding his burning cheek with one hand, and tried to speak. As soon as Ino opened her eyes, she felt something stepping on the back of her foot. When she looked down, it turned out to be a fat rat. Ah! She screamed even louder and raised her hand to punch him subconsciously. Bang! Ming-Shi uncovered his eyes with his other hand in pain. After seeing this tragic scene, Shikamaru and Choji both exclaimed in their hearts. Luckily it wasn't me. Ino waved her hands for a long time before she stopped. She opened her eyes and saw Ming-Shin in front of her. One of his eye sockets was sunken and the other side of his cheek was red and swollen. She couldn't help but shout for him subconsciously. Who is the black-hearted person who did this? It's too much. Ming-Shin, Shikamaru, and Choji all looked at each other when they heard her well-intentioned complaint. They couldn't help but mutter in their hearts, isn't it your ancestors who did this? It's so abominable. Look at what Ming-Shin has been beaten into. Ahem. Ming-Shin had no choice but to choose not to tell the truth to avoid embarrassing everyone. He changed the subject and said, Ino, how is the search going? The person Ino calmed down a little after hearing this. After a long while, she raised her hand and pointed to a room in front. Now there is only that room left to be checked. Okay. Ming-Shin nodded, turned to look at Shikamaru and Choji, and tilted his head. Let's go. Yeah. The two responded and followed, walking in front of Ino. When they arrived outside the room, Ming-Shin first put his ear to the door and listened carefully to see if there was any other movement. How is it? Choji asked curiously in a low voice. He raised his eyes and shook his head gently at the three of them, then put his finger into the keyhole. Slowly, the whole finger was wrapped by the wood protruding from the skin and spread to the lock. After waiting for a long time, Ming-Shin suddenly turned his finger, and the door opened with a click. Hey, so magical? Choji couldn't help but grin and praise. Shh, keep your voice down. Ino slapped him on the back of his head. Do you want to attract those iron lumps again? Choji shrank back and scratched his head. Ming-Shin watched them playing tricks and shook his head speechlessly. After pushing the door open by himself, he and the three people entered the room one after another. Hiss. As soon as they entered the room, Choji and Ino were shocked by the scene in front of them. Dad. Shikamaru opened his eyes wide and looked at his father in disbelief, being tied to a cross wooden frame with thick ropes and whipped all over his body. There was no intact place. Darn. Damn. Ming-Shin hurriedly used shuriken with Shikamaru to cut the rope and put down Shikaku, who had already fainted. Quick, Ino. Ming-Shin turned around and shouted. Oh, okay. Ino was stunned for a while before acting. She hurriedly took out the ointment she carried with her from her arms and helped Shikaku wipe the wound. TSK. Soon, Shikaku was awakened by the natural pain when Ino applied the ointment on his wound. Dad. Shikamaru, who had been supporting him, saw him wake up and asked anxiously, how do you feel? Shikaku frowned and spoke with some difficulty. Uncle Shikaku, don't speak now. It won't be too late to talk after we are out of danger. Ming-Shin saw this and interrupted him, saying to everyone, now that we have found the person, we ta. At this moment, a team of armored soldiers suddenly rushed out from the corridor and ran straight towards them. TSK, they came so fast. Ming-Shin saw this and ordered several clones to deal with the armored soldiers. Let's go quickly. Yeah, good. Choji took Shikaku from Shikamaru and carried him on his back. Under the resistance of the clones, the group quickly passed the battle area, left the cabin, and came to the deck. They jumped from the railing and fell back to the water. Swish, swish. What should we do now? Ino stood on the water, watching the battles everywhere, and asked everyone. Wait, hey, look over there. Shikamaru was about to deploy countermeasures, but Ming-Shin raised his hand and pointed to something in surprise. Everyone looked in the direction he pointed and found that a battleship had turned around and was increasing its speed, trying to leave the battle area. TSK, are they trying to run away? Ming-Shan said with a frown. Upon hearing this, Ding-Si let out a sigh of relief. Hey, it's good that they ran away, so then they will go somewhere else and continue to cause trouble to other countries. Ming-Shan was not as optimistic as Ding-Si. Things like today will continue to happen in other places. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 Curry Balls. Mingshan is right. Shikaku, who had not spoken, suddenly interrupted. If we let them leave like this, I'm afraid things will become very troublesome. Dad. Shikamaru looked at his father in surprise when he heard him. Why is that? They have been looking for the legendary Greya vein mine. Shikaku said slowly. Greya? After hearing this, several people looked at each other. Obviously they didn't know. Even Mingshan had never heard of it. And he asked Shikaku, is it something like Jinkela? Jinkela. Shikaku was stunned when he heard it. What is that thing you are talking about? Huh? Shikamaru and Choji also looked at him in surprise, not understanding what it was, and asked, Mingshan, the Jinkela you mentioned, is it a secret treasure of ninjutsu from some country? No. Mingshan was embarrassed as usual, and he bit the bullet and perfunctorily smiled. Well, this is not the point. Let's continue to listen to Uncle Shikaku. He quickly covered up and changed the subject. Well, I don't know much information. Shikaku nodded, afraid that he would faint again. I only know that Greya is a strange stone that contains a lot of chakra. People in ancient times used this ore to build a huge super civilization world, but in the end it declined and disappeared for some reason. Now they want to find this kind of Greya vein, and then try to control the world by controlling a large number of Greyas. What? Ino and Shikamaru were shocked when they heard it. Hey, why does this script look so familiar? Mingshan was very puzzled after hearing what Shikaku said, and couldn't help but muttering in his heart. Dad, then they can't find the Greya vein for the time being, because the map is in my hand. Shikaku said with a wry smile, after taking a breath. Map? Yes, a map is needed to find the Greya mine. If I didn't have it, I would have been buried in the sea like everyone else. Shikaku said with emotion. He roughly explained to Mingshan and the others how he accidentally found out about this, and how he later got the map with the help of Zuonjian, and hid it properly, so that Hyde and the others wouldn't find it. What about the cloud ninjas of the Land of Lightning, Uncle Shikaku? Mingshan asked another question that puzzled him. Cloud ninja? Shikaku pondered for a moment before saying, well, it's just a mercenary cooperation relationship with them. They deliberately let the Cloud Ninja use the excuse of a dispute with the sea area adjacent to our Konoha to secretly survey and search for the Greya mine here. I see. Mingshan suddenly realized, that makes sense. He looked up at the flagship that was gradually moving away from his sight, and suddenly turned to the fat man and said, Choji, I remember that kind of ball. You seem to have two more. Ah, what ball? Choji didn't react at first, and after a long time, he remembered after Shikamaru reminded him. Oh, do you mean the secret medicine? What are you going to do? Choji looked at him puzzled. Lend me another one to use. Mingshan confessed directly, I want to keep them all. What? Choji was very surprised and shocked when he heard him say that. How can you do this? That's right, Mingshan, what are you thinking about? Ino thought he was ridiculous. How can you keep them all by yourself? Shikamaru also shook his head in opposition, but didn't say anything. Do you have a solution, Mingshan? Shikaku looked at him, not as arbitrary as the three members of Team 10. Well, almost. Choji, lend it to me first. Mingshan stretched out his hand in front of him. At most, I will compensate you with snacks after returning to the village. This? Choji hesitated, and when he looked up and saw Mingshan looking at him with a firm face, he still gritted his teeth and took out the secret medicine from his waist bag, rummaging through it. Okay, I can only give you another curry ball. Curry ball? Huh, that's fine. Mingshan heard the words, smiled and took a yellowish ball from him, put it under his nose and sniffed it, frowning. This ball has a smell. Well, but the effect of curry balls is much stronger than spinach balls. Choji explained to him, on the basis of amplification, it can further increase the total limit of chakra in our human body. Hey, Choji, Mingshan has already eaten spinach balls. If he eats curry balls again, will there be any problems? Seeing him explain like this, Shikamaru said worriedly for Mingshan, it's okay. If he hadn't eaten the pepper pills, nothing would have happened. At most, he would be very weak, and exhausted after the end, Shikamaru. Choji assured me. Well, whether it's okay or not, we have to wait until we have dealt with the enemy in front of us. Mingshin didn't take it too seriously. He swallowed the curry pills and chewed them. Soon, his whole body was suddenly filled with blue chakra visible to the naked eye, circulating around him. This is. Ino looked at Mingshin like this. Did the chakra leak out of control? No. Shikamaru explained. This is the chakra that keeps overflowing after exceeding his carrying limit. Mingshin doesn't have a special physique like Choji after all. I see. Ino just understood it, and then suddenly, bang, the destroyer on the sea far to their left suddenly exploded violently, and bursts of black smoke came out from the bottom of the ship. What's going on? Shikaku turned his head with difficulty to look over. Because we didn't rescue Uncle Shikaku, we had to delay time and keep stalemate with them. Mingshin stretched his legs and feet, felt the chakra energy in his body, and looked up. Now, we have rescued everyone, so there is no need to let these fleets continue to harm the people. Boom. Bang, bang, bang. As soon as the voice fell, the explosion sounded one after another in the battleship along with Mingshin's explanation. Seeing that Mingshin's chakra began to increase after swallowing the curry pill, but there was no movement, he couldn't help but kindly remind him, Mingshin, this drug has a short effect. If you don't use it now, it will dissipate in a while. By then. I know. Mingshin stared at the flagship that was leaving, and instantly came in front of Ino and Shikamaru, and said with his back to everyone, you all stand behind. Swish, swish. The cloud ninjas who had left the dangerous battle area early retreated with the departure of Hyde's flagship. Snap. Deru was the last one to board the flagship. After he stood firmly on the deck, he let out a long breath. He turned around and walked to the railing, looking forward. Although the warships were bombed and sunk one after another by Mingshin, the armored soldiers still obeyed the flagship's orders and fought desperately. Although there were far fewer people fighting on the sea than before, the momentum had not been greatly reduced. Chapter 258, Unprecedented Scale. TSK, this brat. Deru put his hands on the railing. Deru. HMM. He turned around and saw that the people coming were the injured Takechi and Kare. How are your injuries, Takechi? Deru asked him. Nothing serious. Takechi shook his head, but next, do we still have to follow them, Deru? Yes, continue to follow. Deru closed his eyes. Why did you tell the location of that person's imprisonment too? No reason. There is simply no need to offend Konoha completely for those psychopaths. He didn't wait for Kare to finish and explained weakly, I plan to take you directly back to the land of lightning after Hyde's flagship is completely out of danger. Damn it, then our companions who went ashore before, didn't they die in vain? Kare was quite angry. Didn't we kill so many Konoha ninjas before? Deru didn't think so, but instead counseled him, to be honest, if it weren't for this mission. Just as he was halfway through his words, Deru suddenly sensed an unusual movement on the deck under his feet. Huh. The other people also sensed it and looked up at Deru. We are not good. You quickly take the others away from this flagship. Deru had a strong premonition in his heart that it would be very bad if he stayed on this battleship. Deru. Z also felt the abnormal vibration and hurried over to them, wanting to discuss countermeasures with him. Z, you quickly take everyone away from the ship first. Deru didn't have time to say anything more. What? But we are not. Don't worry about them. Hurry up. Axie interrupted Z's words and urged him. Swish, swish. Under Deru's order, Takechi and Kare all followed his instructions one after another, quickly flashed to gather their companions and left. Z felt the bottom of the ship shaking more and more obviously. After a slight hesitation, he followed and left to inform others. Ha ha. Deru, what are you doing? Ha. Deru looked up at Camilla flying in the air. As soon as she landed, she walked towards him angrily and asked, what do you mean by asking all your subordinates to leave the flagship? Ha, I seem. Click. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw several very green and attractive leaf buds popping up on the deck. Ha. Deru looked at the branches and green leaves that emerged from the ground and quickly guessed what was going on. He was shocked and didn't care to continue talking to Camilla. He quickly jumped off the deck, flipped to the side of the hull, and ran along the wall to find his companions. "Deru, you." Camilla was very angry when she saw him ignoring her so arrogantly. When she was about to scold him, bang, snap, snap, HMM. The deck beneath her feet was shattering. In the blink of an eye, countless huge branches and green leaves grew in a crisscross pattern like a python playing in the water, and in just a few breaths, they filled the entire bow. Damn it, what is this? Camilla was shocked and angry, and she quickly transformed and took off into the air. Whoosh! She barely got half a step ahead and narrowly avoided the thorns that followed. Damn it. She looked around angrily in midair and found that it was not just her flagship, but even the fleets that were fighting fiercely in the distance had also encountered this kind of attack. Almost all the hull steel plates of battleships and destroyers were pierced through by the rough vines either from the outside or from the inside. The scene was extremely bloody and shocking. There were several armored soldiers pierced by sharp thorny vines. Although their bodies were covered with bloody thorns, they were still swinging sledgehammers mechanically in their hands, which made people change color and their scalps numb. Boom. Cap. Deru swung his sword to cut off the last vine, and immediately swung his arms to throw his companion from the observation deck of the flagship into the sea, where Takechi and Kare caught him. Puff. As soon as the two of them held up their injured companions, they immediately ran away, running desperately on the water. Wow. 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 They took the wounded and looked sideways with horror at the tall trees behind them that were rising from the sea from time to time, suspending several battleships and destroyers that were already emitting billowing smoke. One of them was even broken in half by the pull of the rough vines. It was simply horrifying. Kare and Takechi have been carrying out various tasks entrusted by the village. They have been working for a long time and have seen a lot, but they have never really seen anyone who can perform such a shocking ninjutsu. Who is the person who cast the spell? After seeing it, Kare asked subconsciously while running. Hey, it's probably the guy I fought with before. Deru yawned suddenly and suddenly appeared behind the two of them. What? Kare turned around in surprise. It's him again. How is this possible? Takechi didn't believe it either. He looked at the whole forest that was surging out of the sea. On its branches and leaves, there were still drops of rain. It was spectacular and terrifying. The fleet was as fragile as paper under its control. In an instant, it was crushed into slag without any suspense. That kid, I've seen him too. If he relied solely on his own chakra, it would be absolutely impossible for him to launch such a large-scale ninjutsu. Deru looked back at the trees that were still growing, his face extremely solemn. Let's ignore the area of the sea for now. It's impossible to grow such a huge forest from the bottom of the sea without some secret medicine or other means. This guy, if he grows up in the future, he will become very difficult. Kare heard this, his eyes full of worry. Let's talk about the future later. Deru saw Z coming over from the other end in a panic with his men. Let's go over and meet up with Z and evacuate the others from the sea first. Evacuate. Takechi was stunned when he heard this. What about hiding the others? Hide? Deru thought for a moment before saying, just go to the west coastline and wait for me. Wait for you? Kare asked him in confusion. What are you planning to do? I plan to stay alone and watch the battle. What? Wow. Kaka. Ino and Choji looked at the towering trees that continued to surface. He was so shocked by the scene that he couldn't recover for a long time. I just heard Kakashi and the others say that tomorrow they can control the tree world of the first Hokage. Shikaku looked at the not so tall figure in front of him with complicated eyes and muttered to himself, I didn't expect that. After combining it with the secret medicine of the Akimichi family, it would be so powerful. Chapter 259 Lujiu. Shikamaru was not as shocked as the other students in class 10, but he was not much better. Morning. He looked at the person in front of him. For a moment, Shikamaru felt that Mingshin was very strange, as if he had never seen through him. I never knew that Mingshin Ino was only halfway through her words, but she closed her mouth again. Ino. Choji looked at her like this and did not find it strange because he felt the same at this moment. What's wrong with you? Shikaku was very surprised to see that the three of them were not in a very high mood. I always thought that Mingshin couldn't beat Rock Lee, so he chose to surrender. I didn't expect it. Ino listened to the loud rumbling sound coming from the growing trees and sighed. It turns out that he didn't even think highly of the other party and was too lazy to fight. Ahem. Oh, really? Shikaku coughed dryly and turned to look at his son, Shikamaru. Yeah. Shikamaru nodded and admitted, it's just as Ino said. He added, Mingshin has never done anything surprising in the village. He downplays himself too much. Huh, this kid Mingshin can really hide his true strength. Shikaku sighed to the three of them. According to his character and ability to use ninjutsu, he could have become a chunin on his own a long time ago. Chunin? Choji was quite puzzled when he heard this, but Mingshin didn't pass the chunin exam. He didn't pass, but Shikaku chuckled and said to the three of them, I can wait until the 5th Hokage takes office and recommend him for promotion to chunin. Ha, what? The three were shocked when they heard this. Hey, what are you talking about, old man? Shikamaru heard this, and his thoughts did not change for a moment. You said that you want to recommend Mingshin to be promoted to chunin by exception? That's right. Don't you always find it troublesome and don't bother to take care of the trivial matters in the village? Shikamaru said bluntly. Yes, Uncle Shikaku. Ino nodded in agreement and then asked him, why do you want to recommend him personally this time? Because this time is different. He shook his head and looked at Mingshin's back with deep thoughts. If an excellent bloodline limit ninja like Mingshin is easily buried and only let him continue to do odd jobs for the village, I really can't bear it. Hearing this, the three of them did not deny what he said. Boom. Pop. Coincidentally, at this time, the performance of the wood release ninjutsu finally stopped. Mingshin opened his sweaty hands tightly and stiffly, bent down to his knees, and gasped heavily. Hey, what are you guys talking about? After calming down a little, he took advantage of this short break to turn around and ask his teammates. He had been concentrating all his attention on performing the technique and didn't listen carefully to what they were talking about. Nothing. Shikamaru looked up at him, shook his head, and asked, is the ninjutsu over? Yeah. Mingshin nodded and wiped the sweat off his cheeks with effort. Now the effect of the medicine has worn off, and it's impossible for me to continue. Mingshin, you are so amazing. Choji held it in for a long time, but still said it out loud, full of admiration. You can use the ninjutsu to the fullest. No. Before he could finish his sigh, Mingshin shook his head and denied it, and instead said to Choji, that's because you lent me the curry balls. Without this secret medicine, the power of the tree world's birth could not be increased to such an extreme. Hey, Mingshin, don't be so modest. Ino interrupted him, looking at the armored fleet heavily wrapped by the huge forest. Now we. Boom. Boom. Just when Ino was about to ask Mingshin for his opinion, a loud noise was heard. Everyone looked up and found that someone had blown a big hole in the ironclad flagship that was tightly wrapped by trees and escaped from the sea in the distance. Who is that person? Shikamaru looked up and saw a strangely dressed orange-haired man flying in the air with 4 black and grey spiral wings behind him, looking around in extreme anger. That person is Hyde. Shikaku also saw the other party. His face turned pale and became extremely solemn. He is the commander of this entire super fleet. So, he is the final boss? Mingshin said teasingly. Boss? Ino and Choji were stunned when they heard it. What do you mean? It means the strongest villain. Mingshin briefly explained, and then he pulled out the Kusanagi sword from his waist again. Mingshin, what are you doing? Shikaku looked at his posture and had a bad feeling in his heart. Get ready to fight the boss, Uncle Shikaku. Mingshin retracted his gaze, turned his head, and glanced at Shikaku. Are you alone? Shikaku was very surprised. Seeing him nod, he subconsciously said, with your current strength, you can't beat him. The reason why Shikaku was so arbitrary was because he felt that Mingshin would not get any good from Hyde and wanted to try to dissuade him. Mingshin, the effect of the curry pills has just dissipated. You can't just show off your strength to fight the enemy again. At this time, Dingxi suddenly interrupted and persuaded him. Mingshin looked at Dingxi in surprise and asked him, why is that? Because after taking the curry pills, your whole body will be very tired and weak. Dingxi said to him with a rare serious face. At this time, if you go. But I don't have it now. Dingxi was stunned when he heard it. Hey, when I just finished the ninjutsu, I did feel very tired and weak, but after a while, the symptoms disappeared completely. Mingshan said, and he poured out the few remaining pills from his small bottle and put them in his palm. Huh. Hearing him say this, Choji was a little dumbfounded and thought carefully, you just said that the symptoms after taking the medicine. It's okay. Mingshan swallowed the pill directly. How is this possible? Hearing such a certain statement, Choji looked like he had seen a ghost and complained about Mingshan in doubt. You took 2 secret medicines, spinach pills and curry pills, in a row. You know, if it were an ordinary person. Click. Shikamaru suddenly put his hand on Choji's shoulder, and when he turned his head to the side in confusion, he shook it gently and said, people have different physiques. There is nothing strange about this, Choji. Oh. He wanted to say a few more words, but seeing that Shikamaru said so, he didn't say anything more. Everything depends on human effort, Uncle Shikaku. Mingshan saw that Choji had stopped making a fuss, so he turned to Shikaku and continued, don't worry, I can't beat them. Well, can I still outrun those guys? Seeing that Mingshan was still in the mood to make fun of him, Shikaku didn't know whether to be angry or smile bitterly, so he could only say to him calmly, since you insist on going to find Hyde, I won't insist anymore. But if, chapter 260 Camilla, if I can't beat the other party, I will definitely run faster than a rabbit. Before he could finish his instructions, Mingshan took over the conversation and laughed. Really, how could Hayate have a subordinate like you? Shikaku smiled helplessly. Isn't it good to have someone like me? Mingshan, then we will go with you. Ino saw that he was about to leave and hurriedly spoke up. Huh. Mingshan was stunned when he heard it, including Shikamaru and Choji, who didn't react quickly. You just said that you want to act with me? Mingshan stared at Ino with a strange expression, looking him up and down. Hey, what are you looking at? Feeling embarrassed by his suspicious gaze, Ino scolded him angrily. I'm going with you. What's the problem? No. Mingshan retracted his gaze and tried to say, it's very dangerous, Ino. I think Hyde is more difficult to deal with than the armored soldiers we met before. It's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. Ino clapped her hands nonchalantly, pulled Shikamaru and Choji over, and said to him confidently, as long as the few of us can work together, it will be no problem to defeat that guy. Huh. When the two heard what she meant, they thought she was going to drag them into the fight again, and they got angry on the spot. Hey, Ino, I don't object if you want to go, but don't involve. Shikamaru had just rescued his father, but he was too lazy to do such a troublesome thing again. He was about to make a few excuses, but unexpectedly, well, we've already fought those guys to this point, so we can have another fight. Ino made the decision without waiting for Shikamaru to finish, and Choji didn't even have time to protest. He was intimidated by her glare and obediently shut up. Huh. Shikaku smiled for no reason when he saw them like this. Shikamaru, Choji, well, Dad. Shikamaru looked at him. You guys should go with Ino to help Mingshan fight. He deliberately teased and provoked the three of them. Hey, is Asuma's Team 10 really not as good as Team 9 with only one person now? Who said that? Ino was immediately dissatisfied when she heard Shikaku say this deliberately. Shikamaru, Choji, let's go. She pointed at Mingshan. Let's go and defeat Hyde with him now. Hey, Dad, you. Shikamaru shook his head speechlessly, and before he finished speaking to him, he sighed and scratched his head again, saying it was troublesome. Don't worry. Shikaku let Choji put him down, and after he stood firmly on the sea, he said to the others, I'll be there. Lord Hyde, who was on the verge of going berserk, restrained himself a little after hearing Camilla's voice from the side, barely maintaining his now very ugly image. Lord Hyde, I heard it. Hyde frowned and turned his eyes to respond to her. After a while, when Camilla flew close to him, Hyde naturally asked, Camilla, what is the damage to the fleet? All were completely destroyed by trees. Camilla was a little afraid to look up and look at him, and said cautiously, TSK. Hearing this, Hyde did not get angry and ask for accusation as Camilla had expected. Instead, he said to her coldly, got it. Let's go, Camilla. Go? Camilla was stunned when she heard this and looked at him in disbelief. Lord Hyde, are we going to evacuate like this? HMPH, do you think I have the leisure to follow? Hyde was only halfway through his words when he saw something approaching them from below. Boom. Seeing this, he activated his greystone on the back of his hand without hesitation and immediately opened a layer of protective net around the two of them. Boom, boom, boom. A dozen sharp spikes were nailed to the outside of the thin light blue dome and fell off in an instant. HMPH, a trivial trick. Hyde was quite disdainful and sneered at the surroundings. Oh, really? At this time, a voice came from above the two of them. Up there. Camilla and Hyde instinctively raised their heads and looked up. Whoosh. There was a metallic sound, and in a flash, the divine Kusanagi sword was thrust into the shield by Mengshin. Hyde was about to mock the seaweed head, but he roared again. Choji. Understood. The multiplication technique. Mengshin dodged with a loud shout, and a huge monster came straight at him. What? Camilla looked at the huge fist-like thing in surprise, hitting the hilt of the Kusanagi sword heavily and quickly, and muttered to herself, how did they jump into the air? Bang! Clang! Exclamation mark. The round shield could not support the destructive force generated by the acceleration of the Kusanagi sword under the action of gravity, and it was directly shattered and broken. Whoosh! Whoosh! Seeing this, Hyde and Camilla immediately used their wings to dodge and avoid the attack of the Kusanagi sword. Then they turned and saw that not far behind them, near another place that was close to the entire battleship forest, a huge wooden inclined ladder was built on the spot with the help of the remaining clones, allowing Shikamaru and Mengshin to jump to the air above this side with the help of the clones and attack without being noticed. Swish, swish. Before Hyde and Camilla could recover from the shock, Mengshin was like a maggot attached to his bones. Under the force of the other hand of Choji in the air, he bent his feet slightly and accelerated, and instantly approached Camilla. Oh, boy, you dare to get so close to me. You really don't know whether you live or die. Camilla did not fly away in panic, but looked at him approaching her in a very playful way, and said with a smile. Hyde was circling in the air, and he also despised his impulsive behavior. This kid is so arrogant and ignorant. He doesn't know that Camilla can manipulate very scary illusions. How stupid. Camilla sneered, radiating black waves around her body, covering Mengshin's sight. What? Ino and Shikamaru, who were also in the air, saw Mengshin wrapped in the darkness, and they were shocked and exclaimed, worried about him. Will he be in trouble tomorrow? Choji, who had shrunk back to his normal height, could only watch him fall into danger, unable to help, and fell down in the air with Shikamaru and the others. Poor little. Just as Camilla was about to announce Mengshin's tragic fate in the air, she stretched out her hands and tried to strangle his neck. Mengshin, who was already close to Camilla, looked at her suicidal behavior in surprise and was a little confused about the situation. Forget it, who cares? He was puzzled for a moment, and then he simply stopped thinking about it. He aimed directly at her neck, his eyes suddenly turned cold, and he swung the sword at her at high speed. Kai, I wish you all a happy National Day, and may our motherland prosper and become strong. Chapter 261 Greya. Before Camilla could react, a not so conspicuous white light swept across her neck, and she stared at him with a cruel smile on her face, her mouth open and closed, as if she was looking at an ant with contempt. Just then, a strong wind blew by, and Camilla kept flapping her wings, but her head suddenly left her body without her noticing. This damned would fly. Hyde was far away, not affected by the darkness, and saw Camilla's miserable state very clearly. He couldn't help but get furious. How dare you? As soon as the three members of Team 10 saw the black light disappear, they thought that Mengshin was seriously injured by the opponent. They were about to lament and regret that they shouldn't have easily believed his lies and took the risk to attack Hyde, but they accidentally caught a glimpse of a very familiar beast-faced human head falling from it. They looked carefully and instinctively gasped. Hiss. What's going on here? Choji didn't care about his scarf that was blown messily by the strong wind. He asked the two people around him in doubt, could it be that Mengshin? He should have killed him. Although Shikamaru couldn't believe it, he had to admit that Mengshin had killed the person. Mengshin? How did he do it? Ino was very puzzled and curious about how he could kill people so simply and brutally in the dark. Who knows? Shikamaru didn't intend to continue to dwell on this matter. He looked at the sea below and nervously changed the subject to the two of them. Hey, let's think about how to land safely on the sea. Yeah. Hearing what Shikamaru said, Ino nodded and turned to Choji and said, hey, Choji, double up quickly. Let me rest for a while. Hearing this, Choji made a bitter face and discussed with Ino in the air. What are you resting for? Ino was so angry that she laughed. Hurry up and bite open the Binglian pill in your mouth and replenish chakra quickly. If you want to be lazy anymore, we will all fall on the sea. Oh, I know. Choji followed her instructions reluctantly. After biting open the Binglian pill, he quickly shouted and expanded his body, fully loaded with Shikamaru and Ino, ready to land safely in the sea. Wow. In just a few breaths, the three of them quickly sank into the sea. The moment they touched the water, Shikamaru and Ino jumped up and left, and flipped steadily into the sea. But Choji was not so lucky. He plunged into the sea. Fortunately, Mingshin's several clones used would escape in time to pull him out from the bottom. Otherwise Fatty would have met Rose and Jack in the Atlantic Ocean. Puff. Hyde saw Camilla's body fall vertically into the sea, splashing large waves. Unlike other common villains, he did not open his mouth and curse Mingshin. Instead, he suddenly drove the grey stone. Whoosh. He manipulated the spiral forewings and rushed straight towards him. TSK. Mingshin saw him running, swung the Kusanagi sword into its sheath, aimed at Hyde, and threw 3 shuriken at him, and then let himself fall vertically at an accelerated speed. Hyde raised his hand expressionlessly, first casually swept away the shuriken attack, and then pointed at Mingshin from a distance. Bang! Mingshin was shocked to feel his abdomen was sunken by an inexplicable blow, as if he had been beaten by a boxer. What's going on? He covered his abdomen with one hand, very surprised by this strange situation. Can this bastard hit things through the air? Bang! Clang! When Hyde's next wave of attacks came silently, Mingshin quickly drew out the Kusanagi sword to defend against this blank cannon. Bang! 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 In the few breaths when Mingshin fell straight to the sea surface, Hyde, like playing with a fool, fired blank cannons to block him. Clang! Clang! The power of the blank cannon attack was quite strong. Mingshin was forced to hold onto the Kusanagi sword tightly. The sword body was shining with bright green light, which made him dare not relax at all. He cursed, damn it, does this guy have superpowers? He observed carefully. Hyde's attacks were almost without any extra intervals. Is he using some kind of magic? Before Mingshin could maliciously guess the reason. Wow. Wow. Mingshin fell straight into the water from midair with a splash. He was unlucky. In order to guard against Hyde's progressive air cannon attacks, he did not slow down and land in time like Shikamaru and the others. He plunged straight down, splashing a large amount of water. Although the seawater absorbed most of the impact of his high-speed fall into the sea, it also allowed the salty seawater to rush into his mouth, nose, ears, and eyes at that moment. Fortunately, if Mingshin had not held back quickly, he would have been choked to death by the seawater and buried in the belly of the fish. Suddenly, after a brief pause, Mingshin swung his arms and legs and glided, quickly cruising towards the bright water above him. And the Grail Stone is really convenient. Hyde steadily folded the forewings behind him and landed on the rippling water. He looked at the slightly glittering round bead on the back of his hand. I don't need to touch the opponent too much. I can directly bombard the empty cannon. While thinking secretly, a ray of ardent ambition flashed in his eyes. If I can successfully find the Grail Vein. Just as Hyde was thinking secretly, a series of small bubbles suddenly emerged on the water surface somewhere near his feet. And then only a moment later, wow. A huge black shadow suddenly jumped out, and it was Mingshin who broke through the water, holding the Kusanagi sword in his hand, and swung his soldiers to attack the opponent without looking away. Oh. Hyde was not surprised, but rather indifferent and disdainful. He just waved his hand, driving the Grail Stone, and the green light passed by quickly. Boom. Mingshin was careless for a moment, and was hit by Hyde's strange move again and flew away, tumbling several times on the water. Bang, bang, bang. Wow. Mingshin gritted his teeth and stepped on the water with his feet, splashing waves of silver white water. Oh, You are quite durable, wouldn't fly. Hyde looked at Mingshan, who was standing firm after being hit twice in a row, and said curiously, "Pa." Mingshan heard this and spat into the sea without any image, saying contemptuously, "PFFT, your soft attack has no effect on me at all. Hey, as a leader, you are always forced to make some cruel decisions, such as dealing with annoying flies yourself," Hyde said to himself after hearing Mingshan's provocative words. He raised his hand and continued to point at Mingshan. "Oh, today there will be more noble sacrifices." "Really?" Mingshan heard Hyde's judgment and said with disdain, "You can try it yourself. Foolish man who doesn't know how to live or die." Hyde shook his head and the back of his hand flashed with green light again. Mingshan held both ends of the Kusanagi sword with both hands and clearly felt that this wave of blank artillery was much more fierce than before. Chapter 262. Assistance of Class 10. Damn it, how can Hyde be like Master Lu, who has turned on the cheats and can directly ignore the cooldown time of the CD? Mingshan stared at him with a lot of complaints. Bang, clang. In the end, because of the Kusanagi sword, this blank cannon did not cause any actual damage to Mingshan, but only made him retreat involuntarily. "Mingshan, we are here to help you." Mingshan heard this familiar shout and subconsciously raised his eyes to look at the source of the sound. He was shocked to see that behind Hyde, there were 3 people, each adjusting different directions to run towards him. Ino? Mingshan saw that she was with Shikamaru and the other 2, and thought it was not good. He quickly kicked his feet and rushed straight towards Hyde. Are you doing useless work again?" Hyde looked at him rushing towards him, but raised his hand expressionlessly, let the greystone run brightly, and then turned to aim at Ino and the other 2 who were getting closer and closer. "Hey," he raised his hand towards us. "What is he doing?" Ino saw Hyde's action. Although she asked Shikamaru in confusion, she did not stop at all. From the situation, he should be releasing some powerful moves. Is he? Get out of the way. Before Shikamaru could guess, whoa. Several identical Mingshans emerged from the water. They each flashed in time and blocked the 3 people. Bang, clang. After being hit by this invisible and heavy air cannon, the clones quickly faded into a wooden state, and they followed Shikamaru and the others, and retreated on the water. TSK, this kid. Seeing that this attack did not work, Hyde turned his hand, and turned to Mingshan, to drive Greya to sweep. A half-moon-shaped arc air wave was swept out of thin air, directly blocking him out of the attack range. Wow. After taking a few steps back, Mingshan did not lose heart and relax, but gritted his teeth, and continued to charge forward with his sword. He is such an annoying fly. Seeing that he was like a dogskin plaster, he was very angry, but he did not show it on his face. He just raised his hand and aimed, launching greystone attacks repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. A series of blank shots came down. With the previous lesson, Mingshan remembered and moved around the periphery of Hyde, not approaching him easily, waiting for an opportunity to move. Wow, wow, wow. From time to time, blank shots that missed Mingshan hit the sea surface, causing water to splash and explode. Ino and Shikamaru moved the wooden clone away. Seeing that Mingshan was dealing with Hyde, and they could only watch, they asked anxiously, "What should we do now, Shikamaru?" Shikamaru did not answer her directly, but after carefully observing the dynamics of the 2 people's fight at this moment, he squatted down. "Shikamaru?" Ino saw him squatting there and spoke instinctively. Shh. This time, Choji was very clear about what Shikamaru was doing at the moment. "Ino, he's thinking." He put his finger on his lips and reminded her. Boom. Wow. In the distance, Mingshan and Hyde were still fighting, and the roar of hitting the water surface could be heard from time to time. Shikamaru closed his eyes calmly, lowered his head and thought silently. He put his hands together into a bucket shape, regardless of what was happening in the outside world at the moment, and focused on thinking about how to formulate a battle strategy. After a long time, Shikamaru opened his eyes and stood up. He said to Choji and Ino seriously, "I have an idea." Wow. Mingshan swung the Kusanagi sword and once again struggled to block Hyde's new blank attack. TSK, I have to find a way to fight in close combat. It's not a good idea to be bombarded by him all the time. Mingshan thought. "Kid, don't you have any other means to use now?" Hyde asked him teasingly while driving Greer. Mingshan ignored him and concentrated on dodging the attack of the blank gun. Bang, bang, bang. Just when Mingshan was planning to temporarily distance himself from Hyde and prepare to use some ninjutsu to deal with him, he suddenly saw from the corner of his eye that Choji, Shikamaru, and Ino were sneaking closer to Hyde, and he was secretly annoyed. What on earth are they trying to do? Although he didn't know what they were going to do, Mingshan still puffed up his cheeks quickly and held his breath. Wow. The whole person dived into the sea very neatly and quickly raised his hands to prepare for ninjutsu. Hyde was stunned when he saw this. He raised his hand and watched the boy suddenly dive into the sea. He didn't understand what he was going to do. He murmured, "This wouldn't fly. The art of multiplication." At this moment, an inexplicable roar interrupted Hyde's thoughts. A circle of black shadows around his body continued to expand, which made him subconsciously frown and look up at the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Ino appeared from outside the palm, with shuriken between her fingers, and she threw them all at Hyde. It's a boring move. He didn't take the attack seriously at all. With a wave of his hand, he controlled the gray stone and swept these bluffing tickling attacks away and fell into the water. Ino saw that the shuriken throwing was defeated in an instant, so he quickly lifted his waist and did a slight flip and jumped back. Hyde never even glanced at Ino from beginning to end and simply ignored her funny feint, focusing only on it. Seeing the huge hand suddenly attacking, he showed a rather disdainful expression. "Are you planning to cover me and sink me in the sea?" Just as he was about to take action, suddenly, Hyde suddenly couldn't move at all and was particularly annoyed in his heart. What's going on? Could it be that someone also used the greystone to control shadow imitation technique? Success. Before Hyde could guess the reason, Shikamaru's voice floated to his ears from the side. "TSK, did this kid control me with a strange ninjutsu?" Hearing his voice, Hyde immediately realized why his body couldn't move. "Tomorrow, now." Ino, who had just landed on the water, shouted to the air somewhere around Hyde. Wow. Mingshan emerged from Hyde's side, his hands in the state of having just completed a seal, and he shouted, "Wood release, tree binding and eternal burial." Hiss, hiss. A dozen small saplings emerged from the water and lightly entangled the important joints of Hyde's body. "Hey, I finally got him." Shikamaru saw that Hyde, the big boss, was firmly bound by Mingshan's wood release, and he breathed a sigh of relief and withdrew his shadow. "Hey, this time next year, I will burn more paper money so that you can spend it on the road to the underworld." Mingshan, after making sure that Hyde could not escape from this technique, also followed his previous example and announced with a smile and teasing. Chapter 263 Dedication. "And now, please die peacefully, Hyde," Mingshan said, and his smile faded. Just when he was about to increase the chakra infusion and make the trees grow rapidly to strangle Hyde to death, he smiled very calmly and said to him without panic, "Oh, is that so?" Mingshan had a bad feeling. What is he doing? Mingshan noticed Hyde's words and the strange behavior that followed. It seemed that something was rolling behind him. Could it be? Mingshan was startled and was about to guess it when he heard it. Boom. 4 spiral wings suddenly broke through the layers of rattan shackles that bound Mingshan from behind Hyde and rushed straight towards him. TSK. Mingshan waved the Kusanagi sword, but only swept across to block the attacks of 2 of the spiral wings, but failed to defend against the sneak attacks of the other 2 in time. Bang, bang. His back was hit hard by the widening and enlarging spiral wings, and he immediately coughed up a mouthful of old blood. Swish. Clang. Mingshan quickly drew his sword and blocked the 4 spiral wings that were attacking him continuously. Whoosh. After the 2 fought for more than 10 rounds, Mingshan barely raised his legs to kick away 2 of the spiral wings, and then used the Kusanagi sword to sweep away the other 2, and then quickly retreated to outside Hyde's attack range, alert and defensive. TSK, TSK. This guy. Mingshan watched Hyde's clothes move without wind. While being torn, his body appearance was transformed into an extremely ugly posture. Although he was tall and strong enough to look down on everything around him, this did not make Mingshan feel much fear. "Is this your true appearance?" Ming Xian looked up at him slightly and said expressionlessly, "That's right." Hyde admitted generously, pulling his ugly face and smiling gently, "Why can't useless people like you die honestly and dedicate yourself to the great?" Hey, Hyde, are you sure you're not crazy? Ming Xian laughed when he heard that, and before he finished talking about his ideas, he interrupted him. "Those nonsense are used to fool ordinary people, but do you think there are really people who take it seriously?" Choking, Ming Xian drew his sword with a cold face and pointed it directly at Hyde. "You are already an adult. No matter how immature you are, there must be a limit." Humph. Hyde restrained his chuckle and suddenly used the grey stone to run towards Ming Xian at a high speed. Hiss, no way. Ming Xian was shocked. He didn't see Hyde's movements with his naked eyes. Swish. When Hyde appeared again the next second, he was close to him. Fuck. Ming Xian instinctively wanted to raise the Kusanagi sword in his hand. Bang. Hyde sneered cruelly and punched Ming Xian. He didn't give him a chance to defend himself. He hit Ming Xian's face hard, causing him to fly backwards and roll over. Wow. TSK, too weak. Hyde was quite disappointed. He didn't expect that after his transformation and the energy of the Greystone, Ming Xian would be so vulnerable that he couldn't even resist ordinary attacks. Ming Xian. Ino saw that he was punched away by Hyde after the transformation. She was very anxious and was about to rush forward to rescue her companion. Snap. She turned around and saw Shikamaru pulling her hard. "What are you doing, Shikamaru? Really?" Shikamaru saw that she was angry and said helplessly, "Before Hyde transformed, we couldn't do anything to him. Now his body is so strengthened. What do you think we can do if we rush over?" Shikamaru is right. Choji also nodded and said. Ino was startled when she heard that and looked towards where Ming Xian and the others were. "Then are we going to watch Ming Xian being beaten to death?" "Of course not. Well, let me think of other ways." Shikamaru's face was solemn. He didn't expect that Hyde actually had a trick up his sleeve. He thought he could kill Ming Xian completely when he performed the would-release secret technique, but he didn't expect it. Hey, the bead on the back of his handies. Just as Shikamaru was staring at the greyer stone in Hyde's hand and lost in thought, the battle on Ming Xian's side became more and more intense. "It's really a headache. It seems that the person who is going to the underworld is not me." Hyde saw the boy lying on the water and coughing up blood in pain, and he felt sorry for him, but he stepped forward and rushed straight to where he was. TSK. Ming Xian raised his eyes and saw him running towards him. Although his speed was not as exaggerated as before, it was also very fast. The strong sense of crisis in his heart prompted him to get up immediately. Swish. Ming Xian had barely stood up when he saw Hyde carrying the four-winged spiral behind him and sprinting straight at him. Ding, ding. Ming Xian responded calmly, swung his hand, and swept a sword across, blocking it forcefully, lightly tapped the water with his right foot, then kicked the spiral wing away, and quickly retreated to distance himself from him again. Hyde saw it, and laughed very playfully. The dog slave did not want to give Ming Xian a chance to breathe. Just like he did before, he also stuck to him like a dogskin plaster. Bang, ding. The two of them fought back and forth on the water, but it was obvious that Ming Xian was getting more and more tired, and he was almost killed by Hyde several times. Damn it. Ming Xian was frustrated and fended off Hyde's use of spiral wings and air cannons from time to time, and decisively issued a concurrent attack. He was not as skilled as the other party, and his physical fitness was not as good as the other party. He was suppressed by Hyde everywhere, and could not counterattack the other party. Are you almost at your limit? Seeing that it would only take a few breaths to kill him, Hyde deliberately tried to repeat the old saying, "Hey, kid, just give your dedication. Give your mother's dedication." Before Hyde could finish his nonsense, Ming Xian interrupted him with a swear word and challenged him arrogantly, "You talk nonsense and don't mention the bullshit ideal utopia. Will you be constipated? Humph, it seems that, before sending you to the ideal country, I have to sew up your dirty and stinky mouth first." Hearing his vulgar insults, Hyde's face was extremely livid, which was very rare. Obviously, he was really angry. Whoosh. Hyde's speed suddenly increased, just like taking the wrong medicine, and suddenly increased his attack to the limit. Boom. Mingshen's body was hit continuously in the abdomen. He didn't keep up with the reaction rhythm for a while and was directly stunned by Hyde's crazy beating. Bang, bang, bang. This bastard, did he grow up drinking Sanlu milk powder? He suddenly became so good at fighting? Mingshan cursed in his heart while taking the blow. Ding. He finally forced him to retreat, and he took several steps back. Mingshan was just about to take a breath and relax. Whoosh. A ghostly figure suddenly appeared behind him. TSK, what are you going to do? Fly? Hyde grinned behind him, just as he was about to raise his hand to personally deal with this evil guy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, Thinking about Countermeasures. The Technique of Multiplication. A giant ninja, 2 or 3 meters tall, stepped on the water and ran towards Hyde, punching him in the back. TSK, these minions. Hyde didn't even turn his head and directly drove the four wings to transform and attack, and sighed, "You should stop it." Whoosh. Hyde's 4 spiral wings twisted into a long strip and very simply and straightforwardly collided with the fist of the comer. Bang. The giant was shocked and retreated on the water surface repeatedly and couldn't help but exclaimed, "What is this thing behind him? Wow, wow." No one answered him, and suddenly a large splash of water exploded in the distance on both sides of Hyde, and Ino and Shikamaru appeared on the left and right. Swish, swish, swish. The two swung their arms at the same time and threw shurikens at Hyde. HMPH, naive, can such an attack hurt me? He taunted calmly, and the 4-winged spiral that had just been retracted was adjusted in the blink of an eye to sweep away the approaching shurikens one by one. Mingshan took advantage of the brief opportunity that Team 10 had bought for him to delay and reacted very quickly to adjust, turning back and slashing at Hyde. Clang, clang. The two of them started fighting again. Ta, ta. The giant stepped on the water and ran to meet the two of them, gradually shrinking back to normal height. Ino saw him coming, looked at Hyde helplessly and said, "TSK, we failed again, Shikamaru." Well, although the result is not satisfactory, he is finally fine. That's good. Shikamaru looked at the newly ignited battle between the two, and although he said this to Ino, he was not very happy. The difference in strength between them and Hyde was too great. This guy is so strong. As soon as Choji approached, he complained to Shikamaru and Ino, and, you see, even if he is injured, he can recover very quickly. Pointing at Hyde, the two looked over and found that Mingshan had just poked a hole in his arm, and it was restored in an instant. His self-healing ability is really terrifying. Hey, it's not that he is really strong. After seeing the other party's ability to recover so quickly after being injured, Shikamaru did not act like Choji, but shook his head calmly and said, "It's all because of that stone." Stone. The two were stunned when they heard it. Look carefully, the thing on the back of Hyde's hand. Shikamaru pointed it out and asked them to shift their attention. That bead. Ino watched Hyde's wrist swing, and there was a bead shining brightly. Yeah, that's right. Shikamaru nodded and said to them seriously, "I've always found it strange that no matter how much we consume this guy's physical energy, Hyde has never changed much. He doesn't seem to worry about himself at all." Frowning and looking at the stone on the back of his hand, "That should be the grey stone that Dad mentioned." Grey stone. Choji thought for a while, "Isn't that?" "That's right." Shikamaru interrupted Choji directly. "Now Hyde only has such a small grey stone, and it's so difficult to deal with." He continued with some worry, "If they really find that vein, and then successfully mine a lot of grey, I'm afraid that things will really be like what Uncle Shikaku said, and they will start to use grey to start wars against other countries, and try to conquer the world." This time, Ino was very insightful, and told Shikamaru and Choji about Hyde's ultimate goal. "Well, that's about it." Shikamaru agreed with what she said. "So what should we do now?" Choji noticed that Mingshan was about to collapse, and was always at a disadvantage. "Mingshan. I know." Shikamaru looked at the other party's arrogant and wanton attitude, and scratched his head in confusion. "It's really troublesome, this time's enemy." Bang. Crack. Mingshan, who was fighting with Hyde on the water, was still helpless and retreated after several hard fights. I didn't expect Hyde to be so difficult. Mingshan finally forced him back with one move, panting heavily, holding the sword and thinking, the wound I cut just now only took a few seconds to heal. This Greyer is really a bug. Ha. Boom. When Hyde once again came close to punch him, Mingshan blocked the attack. Looking at the Greyer stone on the back of his palm, he suddenly had an idea and annoyed himself. Hey, I'm really too stubborn. Staring at the stone, I'll find a chance and just chop off his hand with the Kusanagi sword. Why bother thinking about it? After he realized it, he began to guide Hyde's attack purposefully. Ding. Whoosh. Just when Mingshan was about to reveal more flaws and try every means to induce him to attack him further, Mingshan. Whoosh. Whoosh. Two specially made balls, bigger than pigeon eggs, suddenly flew into the gap between him and Hyde. Ha. Boom. Boom. Under the stabbing of the two shurikens that followed, they exploded in midair, spewing out bursts of purple smoke. Ino and Choji took the opportunity to pull Mingshan back. Ta. Hey, what are you doing, Ino, Choji? Mingshan looked at them in confusion. I asked them to drag you here. After the two of them took him a distance away, Shikamaru walked on the water and came to Mingshan, sighing and complaining, if we don't help rescue and pull you out, you will really be beaten to death by that guy. No way. Mingshan heard it and hurriedly shook his head to deny it, trying to explain, I was luring him into a trap, designing. You are so embarrassed and you are still bragging? Ino couldn't help laughing. You want to say that you set a trap to lure the enemy, right? Without leaving him any mercy, if Choji and I didn't show up in time to pull you away, brother, you can wait to be hanged. Mingshan was speechless after what she said. Okay, stop talking. Shikamaru saw that she was talking more and more, and subconsciously, cold sweat broke out. He quickly interrupted and changed the subject, saying, the smoke will be gone soon, and then we can. Hey, why don't they think of a countermeasure quickly, and have the time to chat there? Deru, who was watching all this from a long distance, rested his hands lazily on the back of his head, leaned against the damaged battleship, and muttered to himself. After watching his teammates who came out together leave, he returned to the battle area alone, silently watching the whole process of the fight between Mingshan and Hyde. Ta. Suddenly, there were bursts of rapid water stepping sounds behind him. After hearing this sound, Deru instinctively reached back and grasped the handle of the knife, and suddenly his whole body was filled with a strong murderous intent, alerting the newcomers. Chapter 265 Underwater. Hey, it's me, Deru. Seeing that he was so defensive, the man quickly spoke to identify himself to avoid being hurt by mistake. As soon as he heard the man's voice, Deru was subconsciously stunned and said, Z. He turned around and saw that it was really him. Why are you back again? Deru asked the other party in confusion. I was worried about your situation, so after instructing Kari and Takechi, I turned back to find you. Z told Deru the truth and walked closer to him. Really? Deru smiled bitterly, shook his head, and turned his gaze back, and then didn't say anything to criticize him. What's the situation now? Z's gaze followed Deru's gaze to the Konoha ninja and asked, hey, what are they doing? Deru did not answer him directly. Instead, he saw Mingshan and Shikamaru and the others, after a brief negotiation, suddenly started to act again on their own, and suddenly disappeared in an instant. He muttered, it seems that they have already found a way to deal with Hyde. What do you mean? Z, who had just arrived here, did not understand what he meant, and did not understand the specific situation on the battlefield at the moment. Well, just watch the battle with peace of mind, Z. Deru turned his head and said to him, there will be a result soon. Result? Z was stunned when he heard it, and then he found something wrong with the Konoha ninja. Hey, they were all here just now, except for the seaweed head. Where are the other few of them? Deru smiled slightly when he heard it. There is no point in saying it, Z. Just wait and see. Hey, where can they run to in a while? Just as Z was muttering to himself and thinking hard, Hyde sighed. Wow. Mingshan took advantage of the fact that the smoke covering Hyde had not completely dissipated and cast a spell and shouted, would release, multiple would clone technique. he instantly created a large number of clones that looked the same as himself, which scattered in all directions and roamed around Hyde, waiting for an opportunity to attack. What are you doing? Dera didn't understand his operation. Are you planning to use the clones to attack? After Z made a judgment in his mind, he shook his head directly. It's useless. It seems that you have no other tricks to use. After the smoke was cleared, Hyde looked around at the clones and shook his head teasingly. The inferiors are always the inferiors. He looked at Mingshan with pity. What a sad little devil. Really? The original and the clones shook their swords together and said in unison without anger, we will send you to the Utopia report you have been thinking about. Swish, swish, swish. They all set off to attack Hyde at the same time. How shameless. After hearing this, Hyde just shook his head in a very bored manner, folded the 4 black spiral wings behind him, and transformed them into a red ball again, floating behind him, and ran out in the next second. Whoosh. Hyde laughed wildly, kicking and punching the clones that attacked him. Bang, bang, bang. Clang. Under Hyde's series of heavy punches, Mingshan's clones were blown into sawdust and buried in the sea. TSK, it's really unbearable. Wow, wow. Before Hyde finished his ridicule, his feet were suddenly grabbed by the hands that suddenly emerged from the seabed from the left and right. Hyde was not surprised by this sudden situation, but guessed, is it those 2 little ghosts? He bent one leg slightly, turned around and lifted it up, and with great strength, he dragged one of the hands that was clasped under his feet out of the water. Wow. Water splashed everywhere. Ino was forcibly pulled out. Under the horrified gaze of the little girl, Hyde was about to shake his legs and cruelly throw her out with a smile. Wow. Choji, who was hanging on his other leg, and Mingshan took action in time. Choji gritted his teeth and pulled Hyde's trouser legs underwater, while Mingshan took decisive action, holding the Kusanagi sword, and pointed it at his waist, sweeping it sharply, pretending to cut it in 2 with one knife. HMPH. Hyde didn't blink, and threw Ino, who screamed, directly away. Wow. 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 Just when she was about to be smashed under the water, a figure suddenly jumped out from the bottom of the sea, with wet water drops on his clothes, barely stepped on the water surface, caught Ino, who was still moving forward, and slid backwards together. TSK. Hyde looked at the kid with disappointment, and was caught steadily by Mingshan's wooden clone. Die. A sudden shout came over, and at this moment, Mingshan's real body had already attacked. Hyde didn't take it seriously and casually activated the 4 red balls behind him, and in an instant, the spiral wings stretched out and enlarged, wrapping his whole body. Ding. The Kusanagi sword chopped on the spiral wings stiffly, rubbing out little stars. Mingshan didn't get discouraged, but raised the corners of his mouth and said to Choji meaningfully, it's going to be hard for you, Choji. Choji responded depressedly. Hyde was stunned when he heard the words, and he had some doubts in his heart to guess what he meant by this. What is he doing? Wow. He was still thinking, and his feet suddenly seemed to be dragged into a deep sea whirlpool by something heavy, and sank madly. Damn it, what's going on? Hyde noticed that there was something wrong with his feet, and hurriedly looked under the water. His eyes widened in shock. What, this guy? He saw that from some point on, under half of Dinx's body, there were countless dense wooden clones of Mingshan, pulling the fat man hard and sinking into the sea. Do you think you can easily defeat me like this? Hyde took it for granted that they were going to sink him to the bottom of the sea and drown him. He quickly raised the grey stone on the back of his hand and tried to use it to guide and forcefully float back to the surface of the water. Whoosh, whoosh. Just as Hyde was about to guide his hand upward, Mingshan had already gone into the water at some point, and a ghost appeared around the 2 of them. He suddenly opened his eyes in the deep water, held the sword in his mouth, adjusted his body's perception of the waters floating and sinking, and swam at a high speed to approach Hyde. Damn it. Hyde saw Mingshan coming over, but because he was underwater, Greya was forced to use it to keep floating and lift himself up, and he couldn't easily change it to his use. Why not at this time? Cough. Ino coughed while lying on the water. Although Mingshan's clone happened to catch it when she threw it out, she was still choked when she was soaked in the water. Shikamaru helped her pat her back and asked with concern, are you okay? Why don't you grab his thigh and throw it? Ino said to him unhappily. Hey, didn't you volunteer to lurk under the water and go over to secretly and carefully grab Hyde's heel? Shikamaru muttered with a bitter face. You even asked me to stay here, to observe and analyze the situation. Chapter 266 End. I regret it, okay. Ino glared at him unhappily. Really, you guys? The clone standing silently by the side looked at the two of them speechlessly. Hey, you have an opinion, don't you? Ino asked him, after she had finished coughing. No. The clone hurriedly smiled. How dare I have an opinion? Scratching his head, he said, now that Shikamaru is here, there is no other danger, so I should disappear. What? Ino looked at the clone. You. Bye. The clone didn't take the time to listen to what she had to say and faded into a wooden state and sank to the bottom of the sea. Really, tomorrow's clone is as troublesome as the real me. Shikamaru complained, feeling helpless to be entrusted with such a troublesome thing. Wow. Not long after the clone left, above the sea in the distance, Tomorrow slowly walked out from the bottom of the water with the support of Choji, followed by several wooden clones. Hey, they're back. Ino opened her eyes and saw the two of them coming back. She elbowed Shikamaru and said, let's go and meet them. Yeah. Huh. Wow. Mingshin panted heavily and treaded water. He took the initiative to get rid of Choji's support and said, it's okay, Choji, I can stand on my own. Oh. Choji said, took out a small medicine bottle from his waist bag and handed it to Mingshin. I still have some soldier pills here, you can use them. Hey, thank you, Choji. Mingshin didn't say anything polite to him. He just reached out and took it, swallowed 2 soldier pills to replenish his physical strength. Mingshin, Choji. From a distance, the two could hear Ino shouting and instinctively turned their heads to look. What's wrong, Ino? Mingshin asked after she approached. Where's that Hyde man? She asked him directly and loudly in a nervous voice. Killed him. Mingshin replied lightly. Huh. Ino was stunned when she heard the words, and she and Shikamaru didn't react immediately. Is it true? Shikamaru was a little bit unconvinced. They had fought so hard before, but now they got through. Here, let me show you something. Mingshin said, shifting his gaze to Choji and giving him a look, as if indicating something. Yeah, I understand. Choji saw Mingshin's look and pouted at him, walked to a clone behind him, and stretched out his hand to take something. What is Choji taking? Ino's sight was blocked by other clones, so she didn't see what the fat man was taking, so she asked Mingshin out of curiosity. You'll know soon. Mingshin kindly reminded. But, it's better to be mentally prepared, and don't be scared. Hey, you're talking so mysteriously, what exactly do you want him to take? Ino muttered to herself, and then she saw Choji walking to the front from behind. After seeing what he was holding, she screamed out of instinct. Mingshin raised her eyebrows and covered her ears helplessly. Sister, that's enough. Keep your voice down. My eardrums are about to be broken by you. You. Ino was a little annoyed. You're too cruel. Shikamaru walked up from Ino's side and looked at the thing in Choji's hand. After shaking his head, he complained to Mingshin and asked, you could have chopped off Hyde's head, but why did you only cut off half of it? It was so inconvenient to move in the water at that time, and I got into this situation without paying attention. Mingshin scratched his head and recounted it, and he also fumbled out a round, blue and shiny stone from his arms to show them. Is this the Grail stone? Shikamaru saw the special pattern on the stone and immediately thought of what happened in the water just now. Well, when we were underwater Hyde's hand was cut off by me. Mingshin played with the stone. I dug this grail directly from the back of his hand with a kunai. Ino was so angry when she heard Mingshin's nonchalant description that she turned to glare at Choji. When she was about to scold him for helping to abet the evil, she found that the fat man's face was not much better. Really? Shikamaru frowned at the head and growled. Mingshin, it's enough for you to defeat Hyde. There's no need. So cruel, isn't it? Mingshin took Hyde's head from Choji. He clenched the bloody white hair and looked at the hideous face that was unwilling to close his eyes. He swung it and threw it far away. Boom. With a splash, the water surface was covered with blood ripples, and the head sank quietly to the bottom of the sea. Hell is empty right now, Shikamaru. A kind heart alone cannot save too many people. Mingshin drew out the Kusanagi sword from his waist, tried hard to wipe off the bloodstains on the sword, his eyes showing deep thought. Some people are worth saving, but some people can only be sent to hell early. Even so, I still can't completely agree with you, Mingshin. Shikamaru rarely advised him seriously. You are killing too much. It's totally unnecessary, every time. Thank you, Shikamaru. Mingshin smiled brightly, put the sword away again, and interrupted his subsequent words. I can't change this bad habit anymore. Sorry, kindness can only be left to those innocent ordinary people. Ino and Choji looked at each other. Although they didn't agree with Mingshin's idea, they couldn't say anything to convince the other to change their ideas. For example, in a battle of this scale today, it was the first time for them all to participate. Okay. Mingshin saw that everyone was somewhat resistant because he killed Hyde, so he quickly changed the topic, pointed to the destroyed steel fleet surrounded by the forest, and said, now Hyde is dead, and he and his fleet have all been destroyed by us in this sea area. He paused. Let's take a short break, and then go to meet up with Uncle Shikaku. Shikamaru nodded and no longer took the matter to heart. Well, this is the only way now. Mingshin, what are you going to do with the gray stone in your hand? Ino asked, pointing at the stone in his hand. Well, this is simple. Mingshin smiled, and snap. He actually crushed the gray stone directly in front of everyone. Greya. Ino looked at Mingshin's action in shock. It's meaningless to keep this broken stone. Since it can destroy the civilization it created in the end, why should we be reluctant to part with it? Mingshin said calmly. Shikamaru didn't expect Mingshin to destroy the stone so easily. He shook his head helplessly and sighed. Hey, you are such a fool. No matter how terrible Greya's power is, as long as we can use it for the right things, then bad things, it will still become bad things in the end. Mingshin did not agree with Shikamaru's point of view, and said to him meaningfully, it is impossible for people's ideas to always remain the same as before. Chapter 267 Deru's True Thoughts. He turned around and treaded water slowly on the way back. There will always be changes due to many things. Even if we can ensure that we can use Greya completely in the right way, can you guarantee that others can do the same as us? Mingshin's question made Shikamaru speechless. After a moment of silence, he finally sighed and turned to Choji and Ino and said, let's go with Mingshin to meet up with Dad. Yeah, okay. After the group finished speaking, they quickly followed Mingshin's footsteps and returned together. Boom. Mingshin took only 2 steps, and suddenly his eyes went black, and he fell straight to the sea. Wow. The surrounding water splashed, and his body was about to sink to the bottom of the sea. Mingshin. Shikamaru and Ino were shocked, and quickly rushed forward, dived into the sea, and tried hard to save him. How could this happen? Choji looked at this sudden change, and for a moment, he was a little at a loss, and then, boom. Clang. There were many of Mingshin's clones scattered around in the sea, but after he suddenly lost consciousness, they all faded into a wooden state and sank into the water automatically. Hey, stop this. Ino, who was carrying people with Shikamaru, raised her head above the water and shouted to the fat man, come over and help. Oh, okay. Hey, that seaweed head looks like he fainted. Should we chase him? Forget it. Hyde was killed by that kid. What's the point of us chasing them now? Z, who was standing in the distance and watching, saw Mingshin's situation and was eager to try to propose to Deru, but was rejected by him. But, are we just going to let them go like this? Z asked him. No, Z, we in Kirigakure just don't need to completely break up with Konoha for those psychopaths. Besides, there is actually a talent like Seaweed Head. Deru looked at Mingshin who was carried on someone's back. If we easily destroy him in a place like this, don't you think it's a pity? Deru told Z his innermost thoughts. He was very concerned about the various behaviors of the Seaweed Head kid, and he didn't want to kill him so easily. In his cognition, a truly powerful ninja has both physical fitness and ninjutsu that are far beyond the norm, as well as extremely skilled means of assassinating the target. But Mingshin was far from these people. His strength was not at the peak of normal adults, and his chakra was not much. However, he was able to forcibly kill the fierce ones who were far beyond his own limits, overcoming the overwhelming gap between them, and finally protecting his companions in the naval battle, which made him feel particularly surprised and curious. Oh, okay. Seeing that Deru opposed it so straightforwardly, it was not easy to insist on his own opinion, and then he silently gave up the idea of chasing them. If we return to the village and Reikage holds us accountable for not protecting Hyde well, it will be a serious dereliction of duty and the mission. He mentioned this matter after returning to the village. Don't worry about that, Z. Deru grinned. Although I don't like dealing with people and gossiping too much, I can still find an excuse to deceive Reikage-sama. Really, you? But I didn't expect that the result would end so dramatically. Seeing Shikamaru and the others leaving with Mingshin from a distance, Deru yawned lazily. It's so boring. We were ordered to leave the village during this period. What on earth have we been doing, Z? Who knows? Z smiled bitterly, not knowing how to answer Deru's question. He was also very surprised that the kid holding the Kusanagi sword would use such a method without any earth-shattering and brilliant method to end the long-lasting battle with Hyde in an extremely simple way. Fortunately, Tim Z didn't see it here with his own eyes, otherwise, I don't know what he would think. Deru looked at the battleship surrounded by the forest in the distance, and suddenly worried about that guy for no reason. Well, speaking of Tim Z, didn't he lead a small team to the Kingdom of Wind alone? Z pinched his chin and thought, in the short term, he won't be able to return to our border area with the Kingdom of Fire. Well, speaking of it, Tim Z is also a very sad person, working blindly and fanatically for Hyde. Deru sighed rarely. Yes. Z nodded and agreed with him. Just for the Greyer mine, the entire ship was destroyed. Hyde died at the hands of such an unknown ninja. Do you think he would be particularly unwilling to go on the road? Deru scratched his head and asked Z's opinion. Hey, people have been killed, and you still have the leisure to pay attention to this? Z was speechless, and then simply changed the subject, saying, now that this naval battle is over, we should also go and meet up with Takechi and others. Okay, listen to you. At dusk, Shikamaru took Konoha and Choji, as well as the unconscious Mingshin, to the gathering point that Shikaku had agreed with them. Wow. The members of Team 10 ran through the water and left the coastline. Choji glanced at Mingshin, who was still unconscious on his back, and said with some worry, Shikamaru, will Mingshin be okay? I don't know. He looked at Mingshin on Choji's back with a headache. Could it be because he swallowed 2 secret pills of Choji in a row? Ino tried to say while running sideways. It's possible, but without any medical examination. Let's not talk about it. Shikamaru expressed his opinion on Mingshin's coma. Focus on the road, Choji, Ino. Okay. Soon, they saw a black spot outside the forest in the distance, which gradually became larger and longer in the field of vision, until it finally appeared as Shikaku's figure. Shikamaru, Ino, you, huh? Just as he was about to greet the 3 members of Team 10 who were already approaching, he unexpectedly saw Mingshin lying on Choji's back and falling. What's going on? Shikaku took the initiative to step forward a few steps to ask them with concern. I don't know. After defeating Hyde, he will fall into a coma tomorrow. Shikamaru scratched his head and explained to his father, it's been half a day, and he still doesn't show any signs of waking up. No matter how we call him, there is no response. Is that so? After hearing what he said, Shikaku's face was solemn. Well, let's take him back to the village first. Okay. They had no better way, so they could only follow Shikaku's suggestion and work together to take people back. Several people from Team 10 followed Shikaku and soon set off again. Because the target this time was Konoha, they rushed straight along the main road. Chapter 268 Asian NV. Swish, swish, swish. After several hours of rushing and slowing down, Ino and Choji, led by Shikaku, finally arrived at the first resting point on the way back, the outskirts of Tansho Street, near midnight. The group stood outside Tansho Street for a long time, and did not leave immediately. The moon is not out at night, Uncle Shikaku. Ino looked up at the night sky, and found that it was very dark, without even a little starlight. After retracting her sight, she couldn't help asking, do we still have to continue on our way? Shikaku shook his head and turned to the three people and instructed, "The view on the main road is not bright, so we will rest in the small town ahead tonight and continue on our way back tomorrow." "Great." Choji heard what he said, and he was so happy that he raised his hands in agreement. "Finally, I can have a good rest for a night." Seeing the fat man's useless reaction, Ino was directly amused. "Do you really have to?" He couldn't help but murmur in his heart, "Choji is such a worry-free guy wherever he goes." "Dad, how are you?" Shikamaru didn't bother to complain about Choji and walked straight to Shikaku's side to ask with concern, "We have been here since the evening." "It's okay." Shikaku shook his head gently. "Shikamaru, let's go. Let's go to Tansho Street and find a B&B to have a good rest." "Yeah, okay." Shikamaru nodded in response, and the group of people started to run towards Tansho Street again. After entering the gate of Tansho Street, they quickly found a B&B along the way. After simple registration procedures, Shikaku arranged all the people very neatly. Ino had a separate room. Mingshan was taken care of by Shikamaru, who was troublesome but very careful, while he and Choji made do with each other. That night passed quickly, and after everyone hurriedly tidied up, they all fell asleep. In Shikamaru's room, just as he began to fall asleep, Mingshan suddenly frowned for no reason. He was lying on another bed, his left hand clenched into a fist involuntarily, as if he had encountered something. In his dream. "Where am I?" Mingshan opened his eyes and found himself standing on the top of a snow-capped mountain. There were patches of green grass at his feet. When he wanted to look beyond the mountain, he found that he was blocked by the thick fog and could not see clearly. He roughly calculated that with his body as the radius, the area of about 200 steps was all green grassland. Beyond this green line, the mountain below turned into a vast snow-covered peak. Apart from that, there was nothing else. What's going on? Mingshan was confused. He really didn't understand what was going on. He stared at the big rock under his feet and couldn't figure out the situation. "Hey, is there anyone there?" He shouted loudly, holding his hands into a trumpet shape, and repeatedly shouted, "Hey." The voice echoed in the air for a long time, but no one responded to him. It was as if he had been forgotten by the whole world. "Why did things turn out like this when I woke up?" Mingshan muttered. He sat down and was about to fall into deep thought. "You haven't woken up yet." A soft and tender girl's voice sounded in front of him. "Who?" He glanced around, but didn't see anyone. There was nothing else, except the breeze blowing through the green grass, stirring it to bend gently. "I'm here." Mingshan heard the source of the voice clearly this time. He looked up at the sky above his head, and suddenly found that a girl of his age was floating in the air, smiling and staring at him. She had pale skin and grey and soft hair, and was wearing a green dress. Mingshan also noticed that she had two dot-like eyebrows on her forehead. He muttered to himself, "Is that Danshang Mini?" The girl was a little surprised when she heard that. Her body flipped and jumped in the air, looking very beautiful against the blue sky. She asked him curiously, "How do you know that this is Danshang Mini?" "I've seen it on the computer before, when I was reading a book." He let it slip out of habit, and after correcting it immediately, Mingshan continued to look into her white eyes and took the initiative to ask, "Are you a god?" "Hey, I'm not." She was stunned by his sudden question, but then she reacted and burst out laughing. "What are you thinking about? This is not China. There are no gods." "China?" Mingshan was startled. "China?" And stood up suddenly. You, how do you know this name? I've always known this. Why is it so strange?" The girl was wrapped in pure white ribbons that could unfurl without wind. She landed lightly on a large rock while dancing and stood with Mingshan looking at her, saying with a teasing smile, "I also know that you actually wanted to say that you knew about Danshang Mui from searching for information on Baidu on the computer in the past." Huh. Mingshan was really shocked. He hurriedly stepped back a few steps and got into a fighting state. When he wanted to grab the Kusanagi sword at his waist with his backhand, he scratched it empty. He subconsciously turned his head and said, "My weapon. This isn't a dream. How can there be any weapons for you to use?" The girl kindly reminded him, "Just be honest. Monster, I sell my art, but not my body." Mingshan said to her righteously and seriously, You. Hearing what he said, the girl almost fainted from laughter. Now she has become a monster again. Really? The girl threatened him very politely. Itomention, that's enough. If you keep talking nonsense, I will beat you to death. Mingshin was embarrassed when he heard that and didn't continue talking nonsense. Seeing that he had finally calmed down, the girl straightened her hair and introduced herself to him. My name is Yashi's ANBU. Unlike you, I'm a special product of this time and space. Special product? Mingshin was startled, as if he thought of something, and he couldn't help but realize something. Could it be that you summoned my soul to this ninja world? No. Xianmei chuckled and shook her head jokingly. I don't have such a powerful ability. After she took off the streamers on her body, when she sat on the surface of the big rock, gazing at the vast snow-covered area below the mountain, swinging her feet lightly on the edge. Although I know how to use Yomi Barasaka to travel freely through time and space, I'm not powerful enough to summon a living person like you from another dimension to the ninja world. If you didn't summon me, then how did I come to this world? To be honest, I can't answer your question. Mingshin was embarrassed and scratched his head when he heard her say that. Then how did you know me? After asking, he sat next to her at a small distance, and you know so much about the information in my world. Chapter 269 What if? Oh, about that. Actually, when your soul just crossed over to this world, Xianmei looked at him sideways. I used a spell to peek into the memories in your mind. Oh, peek? Mingshin looked at her in a daze, muttering, did you already know me when you were in Izumo village on Aiden Island? Yeah, more or less. Xianmei admitted frankly, from the moment your soul attached to this child's body, I have already sensed the abnormal existence. She casually absorbed the snowflakes in her palm and fiddled with them and continued, later, I followed my feeling and found you in a short time. Huh. Mingshin was dumbfounded. Then why didn't you show up to see me at that time? No, I just felt like it on a whim, so I went to see you, and after we met, I left. Xianmei found his question very funny. Besides, why should I show up to see you? Are we familiar with each other? He was speechless and said rather depressedly, then why do you want to show up to meet me now? I didn't. Xianmei explained, you just happened to appear in this space of mine. Mingshin felt incredible and pointed his finger at his nose. Myself? Well, but. She nodded slightly, with a smile on her lips, and said tactfully, strictly speaking, it is the power of the sacred tree in your body. She pointed at his chest. It's it that is guiding you to come to me. The power of the sacred tree. Mingshin first looked down, then looked at her again. Guide? He felt that the amount of information given by Yashi Xianmei was a bit too much, and he was unable to quickly sort out the cause and effect. Mingshin, actually your appearance is very unexpected. Xianmei said to him in a rather solemn tone, very meaningfully, maybe the catastrophe 4 years later can be avoided because of you. I don't understand. Mingshin shook his head puzzledly. What do you mean by that? The catastrophe 4 years later? He pondered for a long time, but still couldn't come up with an answer. Well, it's too early to tell you this now. Xianmei scattered the snowflakes, stood up, patted the hem of her skirt, looked down at him and said, right now, you will soon face an unprecedented disaster. Instead of thinking about the future, you might as well think more about how to solve the difficulties that will arise in the future. Will I be on the verge of despair? Mingshin stood up too. TSK, don't tell me. Looking at her in surprise, do you have the ability to predict the future? I really do have this ability. Xianmei also revealed, and the reason I knew about computers and stuff just now was because I read your thoughts, so I knew about it. What? Mingshin couldn't help but swear. Fuck, you can even read minds? He was so scared that he stepped back again and again like a conditioned reflex. Hey. Pointing at her, you still say you're not a monster? Bang. This time, Xianmei didn't show any courtesy to Mingshin. She punched him hard in the face and cursed him like a gangster. Boy, you don't use honorifics to me, but you keep talking about gods and monsters. Do you really think I don't dare to use violence? Hey, you really hit me. He covered his face that was hurt and ran around the big rock. Sure enough, no woman is good. Cough. No one is really gentle. What did you say just now? Xianmu's forehead was bulging with blue veins, and she chased him around in circles with her teeth and claws bared. Little bastard, don't think that I don't know what you are scolding until you finish talking. Stop right there, don't run if you have the guts. Am I stupid? I won't run, but I'll stand there and let you hit me for nothing. As he said that, he didn't forget to say a few words to her, which was considered to be a complete fallout. The two of them circled each other for a long time, and when they were almost dizzy, they had no choice but to stop on their knees and gasp for breath. Ha. Ta. Sister, can we be more polite? Mingxian took the initiative to beg for mercy from her. This is too ugly, we are all adults. What the hell, adult? How old are you now, and you dare to talk nonsense? If you count the previous life, I'm not an adult? Humph. Seriously, let's stop fighting. It's tiring for you, and hard for me. TSK, don't make it seem like I'm the bad guy who is unforgivable. Having said that, Xianmei still gave up honestly. She didn't continue to chase him, but sat down to rest. Seeing this, Mingxian breathed a sigh of relief, and squatted down to rest. Suddenly, he asked, will we meet again? Why do you ask that? Xianmei couldn't see through him. Since he treated her as a fairy or a monster, he never asked her for anything. You said I was in a dream, and it was because of the power of the sacred tree that we were able to meet each other. He looked around. That is enough to prove that this place is a very special place and cannot be easily reached. Mingxian retracted his gaze and said to her calmly, so, I want to ask you, will we meet again in the future? Maybe, one day in the future, we will meet again. Xianmei was not sure, but tonight, you can meet me. I can only say that it is a very unexpected thing. Her eyes regained their usual calmness, without the previous aggressive and presumptuous look. Not everyone can see me. Then what are you? Do you have to know? Well, since we can't be sure whether we can meet again in the future, of course it is better to ask clearly. Haha, speaking of which, I'm actually a collection of chakras in this world. What? Mingxian was very shocked and surprised when he heard this, even a little unbelievable, and murmured to himself, chakra collection? Yeah. Xianmei was not surprised to see his reaction. Anyone who heard her words for the first time would find it incredible. My body is empty and there is nothing under this layer of skin. As she said that, she raised her hand and pulled up her sleeves, revealing her flawless white arms, deliberately making holes to show them to Mingxian. Mingxian looked at the holes on her arms that were slowly recovering, and his mood was very complicated. Although Xianmei was not a real person, between them, because of Xianmei's revelation of her true identity, the atmosphere was temporarily quite weird, cold and silent. Hey, let's not talk about my business for now. She put down her sleeves to cover her arms, and took the initiative to break the repression and asked him, Mingxian, don't you want to take this opportunity to learn more about the sacred tree? Sacred tree? Mingxian whispered, looking up in confusion. Could it be that you know the origin of the mysterious sap that I accidentally drank? Chapter 270 The Origin of the Tailed Beasts. Yes, Xianmei answered him readily and stretched out a snow-white jade finger to demonstrate. Click, click. A lush sapling quickly grew out from her fingertips, with many tender buds hanging on the tip, gently swaying in the wind. This, what? You are so hesitant in speaking. Country people are always surprised by things they have never seen before. Xianmei teased and scolded him. I'm a collection of chakras. Konoha can grow from my fingers. There is nothing strange about it. There was not much malice in her tone. I can use a few jutsu of any attribute. Okay. Mingxian calmed down and had begun to be immune to her shocking behavior. What do you want to tell me? You should know that every village in the 5 major countries has a tailed beast. Yeah, I know that. The so-called sacred tree, after all, is actually a synonym for the 10 tails. 10 tails. Mingxian was stunned for a moment when he heard this and said subconsciously, aren't there only 9-tailed beasts? That's right, there are 9-tailed beasts. Xianmei pointed out for him, the 9-tailed beasts that exist in various countries are actually evolved from the splitting of the 10 tails. Oh, then is the power in my body also the 10 tails? Mingxian put one hand on his left chest. Well, you can say that. Xianmei nodded and told him, you survived the great disaster. She lay on her back on the rock and looked at him. With the help of my companions, and because I used those 2 ancient talismans, I was lucky enough to survive, and I also accidentally gained this power that didn't belong to you. Just when she was about to sigh, it can be said that your luck. If I had a choice, I would rather not have it. Whoever loves it can get it. No one would want this thing. As she said this, Mingxian silently recalled the time when she, Kimimaro, and Hotaru went out to Konoha to deliver the goods entrusted by Lady Kade. If they hadn't taken this task, and had encountered all kinds of experiences afterwards, they might. Xianmei was a little confused by his words. When Mingxian found out that there was the Ten Tails chakra in his body, he didn't show any joy. Instead, he was very casual and nonchalant, which made her very puzzled. Hey, why are you staring at me like that? Mingxian asked her with a strange look on his face. He felt that Xianmei was looking him up and down, as if he were a rare animal. Why do I have an urge to beat you to death? After holding it in for a long time, she finally complained. You know, if you had sold or disclosed to the village the place where the residual liquid of the sacred tree was stored instead of simply destroying it, how many people would have coveted it and wanted to try to study the power in you? I really don't know. Mingxian scratched his cheek. Anyway, the cave on the border with the other country was destroyed by us a long time ago. He coughed dryly and simply changed the subject. Well, didn't we just talk about the Ten Tails? I still want to hear the follow-up content. Come on, you must have something else to say. Seeing that he urged her to continue, Xianmei didn't continue to worry about his indifference to the power of the sacred tree. She sat up and said, the Ten Tails can be said to be the origin of the chakra of all countries today. When it was not split and cut by humans, things like swallowing the ocean, tearing the earth, and moving mountains were just a drop in the bucket for it. If you introduce it this way, wouldn't it be equivalent to the god of creation in the myths and legends of my original dimension? Mingxian said to Xianmei. Well, you can think of it this way. It is indeed the ancestral creature that created the land of the ninja world. Xianmei nodded in agreement with his statement. There are 9-tailed beasts active in various countries today, such as 1-tailed, Shukaku, 2-tailed, Matatabi, 3-tailed, Isabu, 4-tailed, Sun Wukong, 5-tailed, King Mu, 6-tailed, Rhino Dog, 7-tailed, Changming, 8-tailed, Jyuki, 9-tailed, Kurama, etc. They were originally symbiotic, and they were all split from the ancestral creature with the strongest chakra back then, the Ten-tailed. Hey, these animals have their own names. TSK, I say, can you pay attention to your tone of voice? Are you so frivolous and contemptuous? Xianmei, who was about to introduce the tailed beasts to him in detail, couldn't help but be angry at Mingxian's words. If you keep talking nonsense like this, I will directly save you later. Sister, please continue to explain. I don't dare anymore. Mingxian cleverly admitted defeat and pretended to be a grandson. I was just surprised to hear that the tailed beasts actually have their own names, so I couldn't help but play a little joke on you. TSK, it's not funny at all. Okay. Xianmei rolled her eyes at him and didn't bother to care. Listen carefully. Now I will introduce you to their different personality traits. Okay, sister. Mingxian nodded at her like a good student listening to the class carefully. Alas, this guy. Xianmei was speechless and began to narrate. Shukaku has a tail made up of multiple needles. It is a large khaki raccoon cat covered with sand all over its body. It has a violet cursed seal tattoo representing the pattern of the god of wind on its body. It has a violent and warlike personality, a neurotic and arrogant personality, and loves to laugh wildly. It has a very bad relationship with the Nine-Tails. A bad relationship with the Nine-Tails. Hearing this, Mingxian couldn't help but ask, the tailed beasts also have complex and changeable social relationships like humans? Of course, there is no such thing as close friendship between them. It is normal for some of them to have bad relationships with each other. Xianmei shrugged, as the Jinkriki of Shukaku, in order to avoid his mind being controlled by it, he is forced to be on guard at all times. Therefore, he will easily suffer from insomnia and his mind will become unstable. Although there are all these disadvantages, the Jinkriki can perform the technique of dozing off to put himself into a sleeping state so that Shukaku's abilities can be fully exerted. No wonder I felt very strange when I first met Gaara. How could that guy have such heavy dark circles under his eyes? It turns out that he is the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Mingshin suddenly realized, sister, what about the two-tail? I was just about to say that. Don't interrupt. Xianmui said to him, Gaara has two blue flame-shaped tails. It is a blue demon cat with a body that seems to be burning with blue flames. It has big and pointed ears, the right eye is yellow, the left eye is blue, and the teeth are double-sided serrated. The two-tail is different from other tailed beasts. It is very polite and speaks in a casual tone, unlike the one-tailed. The two-tailed Jinchuriki, sister, do you know who it is? Mingshin mentioned this. The current two-tailed Jinchuriki is the second Yuzukiman of the hidden cloud village in the land of lightning. Xianmui said, looking at him with a mischievous smile. Why, she is a famous iceberg beauty in the hidden cloud village. Do you want to pursue her? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271. Jokes are not nonsense. Hey, I'm just asking casually. No one would chase her. Mingshin muttered, asking her to continue with the information about the three tails. Isaba, she is a grey turtle with three crayfish-like tails, multiple horns on its body, and some of the exposed skin is red. Its right eye is tightly closed. It gives people a feeling of being a bit clumsy, honest and simple. Xianmui paused at this point. Speaking of which, if you hadn't fled the land of water that year, you would have known the three tails Jinchuriki. Oh, maybe. Mingshin didn't have any feelings for Kirigakure, except for still remembering Uncle Agi and Daliwen who rescued him that year. There were no other ripples. Who is the current Jinchuriki of the three tails? The fourth Mizukage of Kirigakure, Katsuyagura. Xianmui mentioned it by the way, praising him very much. He is one of the few people in the history of the ninja world who can perfectly control the chakra power of the tailed beasts. TSK, what's the big deal? Mingshin was quite disdainful. It's just controlling the tailed beasts. If it were me. Before he could finish his words, Xianmei looked at him with a dark face and the eyes of death, smiling, which made him shudder. He changed his words cleverly. I'm sure I can't do it. Ahem. Let's continue talking about the four-tailed beast, sister. Sun Wukong is a red-haired ape with four tails. He wears a tight hoop on his head, with two large canine teeth exposed. There is a hole in his mouth that is similar to a jet nozzle. His body is much stronger than other tailed beasts, and his body stores hot magma that can dissolve everything. After hearing Xianmei's introduction, he had always been indifferent and paralyzed on the ground, but suddenly became weird. It likes to call itself the Monkey King of the Water Curtain Cave. The Six Paths Sage gave it the name Sun. The king of the immortal ape, Sun Wukong, the great sage equaling heaven, doesn't like others calling himself the four-tailed. He hates humans and doesn't believe in Jinchuriki. Can you stop for a moment, sister? Mingshin still couldn't help but speak. What's wrong? Xianmei saw that when he introduced the four-tailed beast, his face was very strange, and he always looked like he wanted to say something but stopped. She felt puzzled for no reason. If you have anything to say, please say it. Are you sure that the four-tailed beast is called Sun Wukong? Yes. Have you paid the copyright fee for Journey to the West? What copyright fee? Xianmei felt very puzzled when she heard his question. What Water Curtain Cave, Monkey King, aren't these all things recorded in the ancient Chinese novel Journey to the West? Hearing this, Xianmei finally figured out what this guy meant. Fiction is not nonsense, and adaptation is not random editing. Mingshin was about to seriously talk to her about this matter. Sister, let me tell you. Ahem. She didn't have the leisure to listen to his nonsense and quickly interrupted. In the ninja world, there is also a place called Flower and Fruit Mountain. Do you also want to go to the Chinese patent office to complain on behalf of the original author? Okay. Mingshin gave up awkwardly. Seeing that he had finally calmed down and stopped making trouble, Zyanmei continued to explain the situation. You can make trouble, but there is one thing I want to tell you first. The current Jinkriki of the Four Tails is Laozi from the Hidden Rock Village in the Land of Earth. Speaking of this person, she emphasized one point. Laozi can be said to be one of the current Jinkriki who has served the longest. So far, he has survived for 36 years, and the others, even if they are Han, can't compare to him. Fuck, 36 years. Mingshan was frightened by her words. Really? Even if I'm a dead fat otaku, I don't need 36 years, right? In this era, where the average life expectancy of ninjas is only about 30 something years old, he couldn't help but side the other party. If Laozi knew what you said, he would tell. I'm just dreaming anyway, who knows what bad things I said about him. Mingshan said nonchalantly, before she finished nagging. Hey, I can also send him a dream. Zyanmei said with a gentle smile, and gave him a divine reply. Mingshan felt a sharp pain in his heart when he heard that. He smiled awkwardly, and said to her, well, let's talk about the Five Tails again. TSK. Zyanmei had figured out Mingshan's character. She looked down on him and continued, King Mu has 5 pure white tails. He is a white horse composed of a dolphin head, deer horns and a horse body. His strength is one of the best among the tailed beasts. The huge horns on his head can instantly crush hard rocks. When talking about the Five Tails, she even used ninjutsu in her hand to absorb snowflakes. And its personality is always so fast and powerful, and it is not as repulsive to humans as the Four Tails. While she was talking, a few slender jade fingers kept changing, and soon they fiddled with it to create a physical model. Hey, what are you doing? Mingshan didn't understand. He looked at the thing in her hand, and was a little confused. King Mu is very beautiful, right? Among all the tailed beasts, I like it the most. Zyanmei did not hide her love for the Five Tails with a pure white beautiful body. Excuse me. Mingshan saw her like this, and was about to speak. Shut up. Zyanmei directly scolded him. I haven't said anything yet. Mingshan argued rather depressedly. You are really forgetful. Didn't I just say before that I can read minds? Zyanmei looked at him expressionlessly. Fuck. Mingshan felt guilty and didn't dare to look her in the eye. He could only smile and said, hey, just listen to it, little brother. Zyanmei glanced at him with disdain and dispersed the Five Tails model in her hand. The current Jinkriki of the Five Tails is Han from the Hidden Rock Village in the Land of Earth, the person I mentioned earlier. Han. When Mingshan heard the name, he thought of someone and asked her subconsciously, is he Xiao's brother? Xiao. Zyanmei searched the information in her mind for a while. Probably not. These two people don't have much in common. Hey, why do you say that? Han, like Laozi, is not in the Hidden Rock Village all year round. If they are not in the village, where will they go? They travel and practice outside all year round. Hey, won't that Suchikage control them? He can't, and to be honest, he doesn't value the Jinkriki that much. This is quite a rare thing. When you have time in the future, you can go to the Hidden Rock Village to investigate it yourself. Well, let's continue. Where should we be now? The Vulpix. Zyanmei cleared her throat. The rhino dog is a slug with 6 milky white tails. Its body is covered with mucus, and its chin has 7 pores that can release soluble liquids. It is very similar to the summoning beast slug of Tsunade, one of the 3 ninjas of Konoha village in the Land of Fire. But there is one difference. It has its own hands and feet, and its movements are flexible and changeable. Chapter 272. If you need to find a partner. At this point, she raised 4 fingers to Mingshan. The tails of the 9-tailed beasts determine the amount of chakra they possess, so the amount of chakra possessed by Vulpix ranks 4th among the 9-tailed beasts. It has a relatively calm and composed personality. It is composed and not impatient. It has a completely different temperament from Shukaku. Hey, then who is its current Jinkriki? The current Jinkriki of Vulpix is Bubble from the Hidden Mist Village in the Land of Water. Bubble? Mingshan muttered the name that Zyanmei said. Interesting name. Maybe it's because most of the ninjutsu he uses are related to the bubble system. Zyanmei explained to him. Oh, I see. Mingshan nodded. Sister, let's talk about the 7-tailed beast. Yeah. Zyanmei nodded. Changming is a relatively special existence among the tailed beasts. It has 6 wings and a tail. It is in the form of a pupa when it is young, and a combination of a beetle and a dragonfly when it grows up. She highlighted the key points. Its upper body is blue armor and its lower body is a green abdomen. It is the only creature among the tailed beasts that can fly in the air, and it can be invisible and interfere with the opponent's vision. At the same time, its scales have the ability to attack explosively. However, it is also the only one of the 9-tailed beasts that belongs to a small country. Hey, from your description, it looks more like an insect. Why is it classified as a tailed beast? Mingshan was puzzled. You are right, but that was how people judged it at the time. Xianmei didn't think there was anything strange about it. Well, don't take it too seriously. It's a common practice. He also smiled and teased Mingshan. Compared to other tailed beasts, this Changming's personality is quite interesting. How do you say that? It likes to call itself Lucky 7, and often talks about luck and fortune. It is very smart and cunning. It is good at using all kinds of clay to disguise itself and hide its whereabouts. It is average in dealing with Jinkriki. Oh. Mingshan was quite surprised after hearing this. He didn't expect that the 7-tailed beast was quite ordinary, not very ostentatious, and acted quite low-key. Who is the current Jinkriki of the 7 tails? Its current Jinkriki is Fu from Kirigakure village in Taki country. When mentioning this Jinkriki, Xianmei said to mention in a particularly meaningful way, she is a girl with beautiful short light green hair, orange pupils, and dark skin. Hey, why are you looking at me like that? Mingshan was stared at by her and felt uneasy, so he asked instinctively, if you need to find a partner, you can give priority to Fu. Xianmei introduced him to him bluntly. Mingshan was shocked and almost fell on the spot. He complained to her, come on, I'm only 14 years old now, okay? You are now in the body of a 14-year-old boy. Xianmei did not deny it, but despised him very much. But psychologically, you have the mentality of an adult sleazy otaku in his 20s. Hey, can't you just talk nicely? Why do you have to add the word sleazy? Mingshan protested against her, saying that it was an insult to his personality. Oh, aren't you disgusting? Xianmei pretended to look up to him, who was under my bed all those years. Well, sister, it's time to talk about the 8-tailed beast. Mingshan listened attentively with a serious face. Xianmei was so understanding and sensible that she couldn't help but smile. She didn't continue to embarrass Mingshan and said, the upper body of the cow kid is a cow, and the lower body is an octopus. It has a bulging back, and 2 sharp horns on its head. It is the first-tailed beast with 8 octopus legs. It ranks second in strength among the 9-tailed beasts, although its strength is second only to the 9-tailed Kurama. But what? Don't keep me in suspense, C's. At this point, she also revealed another rumor about the cow kid to mention. The horn on the left of the cow kid was cut off by the 4th Reikage with one hand 30 years ago when it lost control and ran wild. Wow, are you kidding me? Mingshan couldn't believe it. The Reikage is so powerful that he can even cut the horns of tailed beasts with his bare hands. Hey, why would I lie to you? Xianmei was surprised to hear that, and then explained to him, as if nothing had happened. At that time, the 4th Reikage concentrated all his lightning chakra in his hands, and cooperated with the 3rd Reikage, and displayed the most extreme level of lightning abuse, Chiome, and only then was he able to forcibly cut off the horns of the 8 tails, and then it was barely sealed by everyone. It actually took the 3rd and 4th Reikage to work together to suppress the runaway 8 tails. Mingshan murmured to himself, feeling that things should not be as simple as Xianmei said. Is it so difficult to control? It's okay, it's almost the same. The temperament of the Ushioki is even more brutal than the 9 tails. Xianmei said frankly, and, although it looks rough and ferocious, it actually has a very high IQ. That's it. Mingshan didn't expect Xianmei to have such an evaluation of the 8 tails. Then, who is the current Jinkriki of the 8 tails? The current Jinkriki of the 8 tails is Killer Bee from the Hidden Cloud village in the Land of Lightning. Speaking of this Jinkriki, Xianmei's face suddenly and unconsciously revealed a hint of disgust. Hey, what's wrong with you? Mingshan felt strange. Nothing. Killer Bee is this Jinkriki, compared to what? More distinctive. Huh. Mingshan was quite confused when he heard her say that. What does very distinctive mean? Do you know rap? Xianmui suddenly asked him. You know? Mingshan felt a little uneasy in his heart. Kirby likes rap very much. Xianmui raised her eyebrows. Fuck, rap? Mingshan was really scared this time. Did I hear it right? Xianmui didn't say anything, just nodded. When I run into this guy someday, should I tell him about medicine? What do you mean? Come on. Xianmui was speechless, looking at him like he was mentally retarded. He likes to play rap, and you're having fun with him? Hey, I'm just saying it casually, don't take it seriously. Although he said so, he still muttered in his heart, if I wasn't in the ninja world now, I really doubt whether that guy has also traveled through time and space and actually plays rap. Cough. Xianmui saw him in a daze and couldn't help but cough dryly, waking him up. Hey. Although Mingshan was startled by the voice, he subconsciously asked, is dinner ready? What the hell is dinner ready? In a dream, what do you want to eat? Xianmui was amused by this idiot. After he came to his senses, he was embarrassed when he heard the words, but he was quite good at cooperating with a few awkward laughs, and then scratched his head to cover up his stupidity. Chapter 273 Initial. Seeing this, Xianmui didn't want to argue with him anymore, and said directly, I'll tell you briefly about the last nine-tailed beast that we haven't mentioned yet. Okay. Kurama is an orange fox with 9 tails. He is rebellious and very arrogant, so he has very bad relationships with the other 8-tailed beasts. Mingshan listened quietly to Xianmui's story, and was not surprised at all, because after all, this was the thing in that guy's body. It doesn't have any bloodline limit or attribute chakra, but it has the strongest attack and defense power among the tailed beasts, as well as a very deep total amount of chakra. It is good at using, and can sense malice, and can allocate its own chakra to supplement others. Xianmui explained to him in detail. Speaking of which, you must know the current Jinkriki of the Nine Tails. Of course. Mingshan said with a smile. The current Jinkriki of the Nine Tails is Uzumaki Naruto from Konoha village in the Land of Fire. They are all from the same village. If you say you don't know him, that would be too much. After a pause, he turned to ask her directly, Xianmui, how much do you know about Naruto's childhood? Quite a lot. Why do you want to know about Naruto's past? Well, about his parents, especially back then. I'm sorry, I can't tell you directly about Naruto's parents. Xianmui refused to answer his question before Mingshan finished speaking. Why? Mingshan looked at her. One day in the future, you will know the whole truth of all these things, but not now, because it's not the right time. Xianmui could only explain to him in this euphemistic way. One day in the future? Mingshan suddenly remembered that she had the ability to predict the future and couldn't help asking, you saw what I will encounter in the future, right? Yeah. Xianmei apologized to him a little. I'm just sorry. It's okay. You don't have to apologize to me. Mingshan shook his head. It's nothing. I just asked casually. It would be better to know the truth. He didn't care about it. If it's really hard to say it out loud, I won't force it on you. Why? Xianmei was speechless when he said this, because she could see that Mingshan had no dissatisfaction or reluctance. You just said that. What's the point of me asking more questions? Mingshan jumped down from the rock, sat on the grass, and looked up at the sky. Yadong, were you also like this in the original world? Xianmei was really curious about Mingshan, so she also jumped down from the big rock and sat next to him. Me. He retracted his gaze towards the sky. I have always been like this. Mingshan looked at her. What about you, Xianmei? Me. Tell me the truth. How long have you existed in this space? Well, I don't know either. Xianmei smiled bitterly, obviously embarrassed by his words. Don't you know? Seeing the mess, Mingshan stretched out his hand and gently pulled back a lock of hair in front of her forehead. Is it because it has been so long that even you have forgotten the passage of time? Xianmei was stunned by Mingshan's sudden action, and saw that, after he had gathered up his lock of hair, he quickly retracted his hand without any hesitation or excessive lingering. A long time passed, and she didn't know what to say to him. She just nodded slightly. Well, maybe, just like you said, I have existed for too long, and have forgotten a lot. However, apart from the impression The only thing I can clearly remember is that I witnessed with my own eyes the whole process of how the two men fought desperately with that woman and how they ended it and sealed it in the end. Xianmui recalled. Oh, two men? Mingxin keenly caught the two pieces of information revealed by her mouth. The battle with that woman. He tried to ask, who are those people you are talking about? That should be the first time I woke up from my unconscious state, and when I opened my eyes to observe the world, I was standing on the outskirts of a village, and the first amazing scene I saw. Xianmui did not answer him immediately, but turned to tell the story. At that time, I was just ignorant, and didn't understand the world. I just saw three people fighting each other very shockingly. Shocking? Yes. Xianmui nodded seriously, and used both hands to describe it clumsily to Mingxin, but because the time was too long ago, she actually didn't have a deep impression of that initial experience, and could only rely on herself to hastily and roughly describe it. At that time, I didn't know who those three people were, or why they were fighting desperately there. She frowned and recalled, so, I stood far away from them, and watched blankly for a long time. I found that the woman could mobilize at will, like the special power of the sacred tree that you now have in your body. Under her control, she could transform it into the Ten Tails and fight against the two of them together. Xianmui pointed at his body. Is she so powerful? Could she be the first Jinkriki of the Ten Tails? Mingxin guessed. You can think so, but if you want to put it more vividly, Xianmui changed another statement. She should be regarded as the body of the sacred tree, representing the true will of the Ten Tails. I don't quite understand what you mean. Mingxin didn't understand it in time. Well, you can understand it simply like this. She is both a symbiotic existence with the Ten Tails and a completely different type of independent existence from the Ten Tails. Xianmui patiently explained to him. What? According to your statement, isn't she? Mingxin instinctively made a sound of surprise. Yes, that's right. This woman is the true ancestor of Chakra, the god of creation of the ninja world, Kaguya Otsutsuki. She is equivalent to the existence of a figure similar to Nuwa in your original dimension. She solemnly introduced her identity, and the two people who have been fighting hard with her. It was a long time ago that I accidentally heard their identities and the reason for the fight from other people. Who are they? Mingxin asked her subconsciously. Why do they have to fight to the death with Kaguya? They are Kaguya's most cherished two sons, Otsutsuki Hagoromo and Otsutsuki Hamura. Xianmui did not play dumb. They fought with their mother for only one purpose. That is, to work together to completely seal her up and stop her from causing trouble in the world. Hiss. Hearing what Xianmui said, Mingxin took a breath of cold air. Two sons, as ordinary people, sealed their mother with their own hands, and it was because of her that she caused trouble in the world. Yes. Xianmui responded. Then what did she do? Mingxin wanted to know. Chapter 274 The Loneliness. It's nothing. Kaguya only stipulates that living people must regularly offer sacrifices to the sacred tree, that is, sacrifice themselves, and let the Ten Tails infinitely extract the vitality in their bodies as nutrients. Xianmui's speech was more and more shocking as he spoke slowly. Of course, this is what I heard afterwards. What did you say? Mingxin never expected that the source and function of the power of the sacred tree in his body would be so horrifying. He muttered, no wonder every time I use would release. In fact, not everyone who uses would release can be like you. Xianmui explained to prevent him from misunderstanding. In the ninja world, even other people who can use would release ninjutsu, they can't perform various levels of would release ninjutsu as easily as you can. Why? Because the chakra in your body that comes from the residual fluid of the sacred tree can be said to be the most refined and pure power compared to others. Remember, at the fire temple, why were you able to learn the difficult and complicated Kuon ninjutsu so easily without spending much time? Xianmui told him the truth. That's not because you are extremely talented and can learn ninjutsu in one go, but because the power of the sacred tree in your body is stimulating and helping you, greatly accelerating and shortening the time it takes to master this technique. No way. Mingxin's face fell slightly. Is it because of it that I can successfully perform the newly learned would release ninjutsu? He reluctantly covered his abdomen with one hand. Well, it doesn't seem to matter, Mingxin. Xianmui didn't think so, and tried to say it more fairly. Xianmui, you don't have to say those words to comfort me. Before she could finish, Mingshan stopped with a lost smile, and said to her, just tell me, what happened later? Okay. Xianmui saw that he said so himself, so it was not easy to comfort Mingshan anymore, and continued. The dust war between Yui and Hamura and Kaguya lasted for nearly several months. The battle between them has expanded from the small village, where they were originally located, to all parts of the world, bringing unimaginable disasters to ordinary people. Xianmui's right index finger tapped lightly on the rock wall, and a very rhythmic sound rang out. The two of them had been fighting hard with Kaguya for a long time, until the end. In a certain fight, their strength gradually surpassed that of their mother Kaguya, and they barely used the 6 paths of Chibaku Tensei technique to seal the 10 tails in her together, and then artificially created the moon, and lifted it into the night sky. The moon? Mingshan pointed at the sky above his head. To his great surprise, the moon turned out to be the masterpiece of ninjutsu that sealed Kaguya, Chibaku Tensei. It was unbelievable. You said they sealed their mother on the moon? Yes, the moon we see now has the 10 tails and Kaguya in its inner core. Xianmui followed Mingshan's finger and looked up, and there are actually living people on the moon. There are living people on the moon. Mingshan was really shocked this time, and subconsciously cursed. Fuck, it turns out that the first person to land on the moon was not Neil Alden Armstrong. What did you say, Neil Armstrong? Xianmui retracted her gaze. Obviously, she had never heard of this person. She looked at Mingshan with surprise and curiosity. Who is this person you are talking about? Hi, here's the name of the first American astronaut to set foot on the moon in my original dimension. Mingshan explained to her with a sigh. I didn't expect that in the ninja world, where technology is so poor and underdeveloped, there would be people who went to the moon to explore science earlier than in my original dimension. Explore what? It was Xianmui's turn to be very confused. Science? Well, forget it. This is not the point. After listening to your weird stories before, I have become immune to weird things. Mingshan shook his head and turned to ask her, what I'm more concerned about now is who is the first person to land on the moon in this world? Otsutsuki Hamura. Xianmui didn't let him wait too long and revealed it. It's him. Mingshan was very surprised. How could he think of going to the moon? Could it be? Yes, in order to accompany his mother, Hamura discussed with his brother and decided to separate and go to the moon, to stay there for a long time, until they died of old age. But Xianmui suddenly corrected Mingshan's wrong statement. He didn't go to the moon alone. What does that mean? After Hamura used the Chibaku Tensei to seal the 10 tails and mother on the moon and took off, they considered their future care. Xianmui hugged her knees. My brother gave the position of the head of the Otsutsuki clan to his younger brother, so that Hamura could move the entire clan to the moon, leaving only one branch on Earth, which is the Hyuga clan that you know now, active and settled in Konoha village in the Land of Fire. I see. Mingshan nodded when he heard it, but then he seemed to have thought of something. He stared at Xianmui, and his eyes suddenly became very difficult to describe, as if pity, and as if for her. What's wrong with you? Xianmui saw Mingshan suddenly stop talking, and just stared at her with a complicated expression. For a moment, she didn't understand what was wrong with him. Honestly, how do you know so much about them? Mingshan asked her solemnly. It's as if you heard them tell you with your own ears. Oh, I told you before, right? Xianmui smiled indifferently when she heard that, and suddenly reached out to pull out a few small grasses around her. I'm just a collection of chakras, not an existence that any living person in this world can easily see. After hearing this, Mingshan was very silent and did not say anything, but chose to continue listening to her story. I can feel everything happening in every corner of the world at will, but, she said with some emotion and self-deprecation, but no real living person can touch me. There was helplessness and habit in her tone. Even if I stand face to face with those passers-by, shout loudly, or try my best to attract them, they can't hear my voice, can't feel my existence, and can only ignore me, like air. Xianmui stood up from the grass. When I grew up and understood gradually, I slowly realized that I'm the most special existence in this world, witnessing everything that happens, but I can't do anything. Mingshin didn't completely believe what Xianmei said and asked her, then why can I see you? And to be honest, I don't know. Xianmei also felt incredible. When he was a child, he couldn't see her existence at all. Maybe fate has destined us to meet. Otherwise, there is really no better explanation than this. Chapter 275 Six Paths Sage. Xianmei, your answer is really perfunctory to me. Mingshin shook his head and smiled bitterly. Do you mind? Xianmei said to him, pretending to be indifferent. Anyway, when you wake up from your dream, we are still friends. Mingshin interrupted her very firmly and said to her, even if we can't meet easily in the future, Yashi Xianmei is still a friend that Ito Mingshin knows. You are really a hooligan and very annoying. Xianmei smiled and disdained him. Who wants to be your friend? Mingshin did not refute Xianmei, but just smiled and looked at her indifferently, like she did before. Looking at Mingshin's sloppy, wretched, and unpleasant smiling face, Xianmei was a little dazed for a while, and inexplicably felt that her heart was moved by his words. It may also be because they talked about too many topics with each other, as if they wanted to use Mingshin to eliminate all the loneliness accumulated over the long years. Xianmei, let's talk about UIE. Seeing that she was uneasy, Mingshin helped to change the subject, fearing that the atmosphere between the two of them would be too awkward later. I want to know, after the two brothers sealed their mother and the younger brother went to the moon, where did UIE go? Are you talking about UIE? Xianmei came back to her senses and mentioned to him, since you mentioned UIE, you probably don't know that after he separated from Yukon and practiced alone, others gave him a special title. Title? Seeing that she spoke mysteriously, Mingshin couldn't help but ask instinctively, what title did others give UIE? Is it very famous? You ask this question like a bumpkin. Xianmei did not hide her contempt for this guy. Why are you arguing with me again for no reason? Six Paths Sage, haven't you heard of it? Six Paths Sage, who are you talking about? Mingshin repeated to himself, and it sounded very familiar. Hey, why do I seem to have heard of this name somewhere? You are such an unlearned and useless man. Xianmei sighed and shook her head and scolded him, feeling that this guy was hopeless. Hey, why am I unlearned and useless? Mingshin was about to argue and protest with her, but was directly and decisively ignored by the other party. I'm the one who establishes peace and order. What are you reading? Without responding, Xianmei slowly spoke a bunch of incoherent words amid Mingshin's muttering. In the war-torn era when humans once killed each other, and terror and suffering spread everywhere, a practitioner appeared. He was the first to discover the truth of chakra and spread the teachings of ninja Buddhism, hoping to restore peace to the world. This person was hailed as, wait a minute, this is. Before Xianmei finished reading, Mingshin finally remembered where he had seen this title. The book I read in Menpun bookstore before. Yes, this is what was in that magazine. You have a bad memory? Xianmei despised him. You completely forget the contents of the books you have read. Hey, those were the books I read when I was working part-time 2 years ago. Now the village has a lot of tasks and work to do. Who would remember what happened so clearly? Mingshin muttered, arguing for himself, but I really didn't expect that Otsutsuki Hagoromo was actually the Sage of Six Paths. He recalled what he had read before. Besides, the book I read only mentioned the existence of the Sage of Six Paths, but never recorded his real name. Hey, aren't you talking nonsense? Do you need to send ghosts to verify the authenticity of the anecdotes written in the magazine? Xianmei yawned. She could actually feel tired even in her dream. Besides, Otsutsuki Hagoromo has been dead for who knows how many years. It's good enough that he has left such a legend through word of mouth. Yes, I've heard of it before. Mingshin sneered. All of our basic ninjutsu today was created by the Six Paths Sage. In that turbulent era, some people rumored that he was the creator god sent by heaven to this land. But there were also different people who opposed and slandered him as a demon who destroyed everything. However, no matter how his identity changed, UIE has always been regarded as a mythical figure by the world from beginning to end. Indeed. Xianmei nodded in agreement. UIE is also the founder of the ninja sect. In that era, when there was no mature national system at all, he was the most prestigious and influential person at that time. she said, with a little respect for him. Although I couldn't communicate with Mr. Six Paths at that time, I was influenced by them and gradually learned how to behave. Hey, the fledgling sect was called Ninja General. Mingshan gained new insights and had a new understanding of the origin history of ninjas in this world. It's Ninja Clan. Xianmui saw that he pronounced it wrong and quickly corrected and scolded him. Really? You can pronounce it wrong? How did you graduate from school? Instilled history into Mingshan. The profession of ninja only evolved and formed gradually with the passage of time, and it was not created by someone. Oh. Mingshan responded and suddenly stepped forward. After leaving the big rock a few meters away, he tried to look down, but found that there was nothing else except snowflakes, not even a dead branch or leaf. What do you want to see? Xianmui walked up to him and asked. Nothing, just to see if there is anything else below, he said with his back to Xianmui. There are no living things below except the snow. Xianmui walked to his side with her hands behind her back. In fact, in this space, there are only you and me. Is that so? Mingshan retracted his head and turned to look at her. Xianmui, how many descendants does Yui have? Not many, only 2 sons. Xianmui raised her eyes and looked at him. The eldest son is named Indra, and the second son is named Ashura. Hey, Yui just follows the crowd in naming. He's so Buddhist. Mingshan couldn't help but blurt out teasing when he heard the name. Buddhist? Xianmui asked him subconsciously. What did you just say about Buddhist? Ahem. Nothing. Go on. Oh. Indra is the eldest son of Otsutsuki Hagoromo. He was born with a pair of sage eyes and completely inherited the best characteristics and talents of the Six Paths sage. He was also the first person to use chakra to fight. The first to use chakra. Mingshan asked, what does this mean? The ninja sect back then actually did not have any martial arts element. Xianmui explained. Otsutsuki Hagoromo envisioned that as long as there was a spiritual bond between people and a healthy mental body, he did not think that everyone had to practice martial arts. Hearing this, Mingshan took over her words and supplemented the rest of the content. So, because of the invention of Hagoromo's eldest son, Indra, the original route planned by the ninja sect was greatly changed, right? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.